now, by the way. Give me a second. I'm hitting my buttons. I'm clicking the start stream on YouTube, all of that, making sure I got all my ducks in a row and everything is started. Welcome. We'll give everyone a few minutes to kind of get in here, right? I know I'm starting earlier than I normally do. This is 5 o'clock, not 6 o'clock. And no, it's not daylight savings time. No, it's not. I'm not a time wizard, a chronomancer who can change the tides or anything like that. But I decided to go early today because my guest here, real American citizen. What do you like to go by? A real American citizen, an actual American citizen? What's your tag here? We can't hear you if you're talking. You've muted yourself.
My apologies. My apologies. It was muted from the beginning. You can call me real American citizen. That's fine. I mean, that's the user I'm going by on Twitter.
Bit of a mouthful. So can I just call you real? Is real okay? Just for
sure, absolutely.
Syllable purposes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, real here tagged me in a tweet I made talking about the people who were deported to CECOT on March 15th. If you guys remember that. The Trump administration rounded up about 240 people into a plane and sent them to an El Salvadorian prison called CECOT. There was a report that came out recently that we're going to be talking about in this discussion here that shows that at least 50 of those individuals were not illegal immigrants. They were here legally. They had no criminal records and very loose, if any, ties to gangs, and they were not given their due process. Real here claims that I'm lying about this or that I'm misrepresenting it, and I invited him on to talk about that today, to discuss it and to have a discussion. So the first hour of content today, for those of you who are early birds, get to see me discussing this with this gentleman here, Real. And then at 6 o'clock, we will be back to our normally scheduled programming, and we will have a panel debate with a lovely range of guests. But yeah, that's the introduction. I think I've stalled enough. I think people are kind of starting to get in here. Nice to see you, Zephyr Hash, by the way. You're a fake American citizen. Fair enough. Welcome to the show. And don't forget, if you enjoyed the content, like, subscribe, send me super chats, all that business. With that, real American citizen, tell us who you are. What are your thoughts here? Why'd you decide to come on today? Give us your spiel.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm a regular viewer of yours. I'm not a streamer. I don't have a social media profile, anything like that. I'm not doing this for my own personal. It's just me wanting to debate topics. You can view my this is the only way I guess you'll know me so far is just my Twitter profile, but it's completely anonymous. And so, except for my face here. So really my goal here is just, I'm a big fan of you, Wick. I think you do a very good job of trying to mediate in the middle of what is the current social left online space. But I see you, in my opinion, make statements that are sometimes reasonable and then sometimes completely unreasonable. Like you're not seeing the other side of the picture. And so I wanted to come on, given your tweet. I mean, this is all pretty impromptu, which I think is great. Right. This is only formed like today. I responded to your tweet. I was like, no, you're wrong here. You're wrong there. You're wrong there. Let's debate it. And so here we are on the show. And I think, we can have a good conversation about those points.
Sure. So
I have nothing to shut out. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's fine. Well, again, I always respect people who are willing to come and talk, talk to my face about things, right? Rather than just tweet in the shadows and then never confront me. So first of all, respect for that. And I mean that sincerely. Like,
appreciate it.
You do get a leg above the rest, right? Glory to those who go into the arena, win or lose. I think it would be helpful for the audience for me to just read the tweet that I made. Give me a second. I'm bringing that up. We'll read the tweet, and then we can read the response to it, and then we could talk about it. So this was a quote tweet, just so everyone knows, a quote tweet of David J. Beer, who published a review in Cato at Liberty, which is a blog, right? And he published his review of 240 Venezuelans that the U.S. government renditioned 2 months ago to Salvador's notorious prison, CECOT. We identified, and this is his claim, that he identified 50 who came legally, never violated any immigration law, but nonetheless are imprisoned at the U.S. government's request and at the U.S. taxpayers' expense. And it's a whole thread linking to the report where he outlines the evidence that he has gathered and presented. So my quote tweet said this, and I want to, because I read the report, I read the thread, I went through it. This is what I said. It said 50 people got sent to a foreign poor torture prison who I'm holding up one, right, for A, were not illegal immigrants, B, not members of Tren de Agua, and C, were not given due process. Out of 240 total. This should make you mad if you care about the rule of law, the Constitution, or just the concept of justice. So what of that tweet do you, sir, take issue with? Go ahead.
Well, if you don't mind, just to keep the context, ready for all the viewers, do you mind just reading my reply as well?
Sure. So this is from Real American Citizen. Our gentleman right here says this: because you lie so willingly these days, Wick, which really is lowering your persuasive ability to any moderates. Let me correct some facts for you. All mentioned were on temporary visa status. Temporary visa status has many implications with it, including legal grounds for revoking the visa. 2, so, visas revoked equal visa revoked. And I'm assuming these are points in response to my ABC. That's what I might assume.
Correct.
Here, yeah.
Correct.
And 3, we're given due process. You just don't know what due process is. Happy to debate all 3 points because you're so terribly wrong and lying. If I were a loser leftist, I might claim you are repeating propaganda, but I know you're just very poorly informed / low IQ. So, do you stand by those statements? That
I do. I mean, I guess I would caveat that the final part is provocative to get
you were
me
trying to
into this
bait me.
kind
I
of
gotcha.
position.
I understand. It works.
Right. I'm not. I don't think you're low IQ.
Okay.
But the position is low IQ.
The position is low IQ. What about the position that I have is low IQ precisely?
I think I would have to put this in the full thrust of the argument, right? Is that so? If I was to say answer just your specific question right there, it would be, why is it low IQ? It's low IQ because it is not really taking into context what the media has been telling us. You're giving us a story that is only and if I can, maybe we'll just thrust right into it, right? Is that so? We had the argument of the Diego Garcia guy, right? And I watched lots of your shows. You made about the same argument that you're gonna make for all these guys, but that story turned out to be false. Would you agree or not? I mean, we can talk about that further, but a large part of my argument this whole way will be thrust on that there was this big media narrative, we're deporting people and it's unjust. And then when we looked into it, finally, when the details came out, there was no defensible position from your side. And I'm gonna argue that forward on all of these things.
So, first of all, do you believe? Let's just get some foundational kind of shared foundational beliefs here. Do you think that criminals, I'm talking like gangbangers, rapists, all those people, do they deserve due process?
Yes.
Yes. So regardless of whether Garcia had done the wife beating he's accused of, whether he was a gang member or not, do you think he deserves due process?
Yes.
Yes. So these people who were shipped out in El Salvador to CECOT, do you think they deserve due process?
I think everyone who's charged in any way in American court deserves due process. But what we're gonna argue about, and this was point 3 on my little list there, right? Is that what you think is due process is not what I think is due process.
Okay, well, let me tell you what I think is due process, at least in the context of American immigration law, because due process is different for different things, for different people. Not everyone gets the same due process. I acknowledge that, right? But due process for American immigration law is pretty clear. The due process, I would also argue, is different if you are being deported to your home country and just putting on a plane and sent and released to wherever. I think the due process for that is that the process you are due, in other words, is different than if they seek to imprison you. Would you agree at least to that?
Your due process is different if they seek to imprison you. I'm
Versus
not sure I could agree on that
deportation
premise.
versus detainment. So deporting someone to their home country and just letting them go, there should be different standards for that than taking
Presumably,
someone and
but
sending them to a prison.
presumably you would have already to have gotten deported to your home country, you would have been received due process. Is that true?
So if someone is deported, like I don't think that necessarily follows just because something just so for example, Bill Cosby probably raped those girls, let's be real. But and he was convicted. But it turns out in appeals they were able to show that he was denied a portion of his due process. Specifically, his Fifth Amendment rights were violated during that whole thing, which again violated his due process. So simply because you've been deported does not mean necessarily you were given the proper due process. I would need to see more information than that to make that judgment.
Okay.
Do you agree with that?
I mean, I think that's certainly fair to say as a blanket, right? Like I gave you the opposite side of that. You responded fine, right? Like, okay, just because you're deported, that doesn't mean you got due process necessarily. Always, I can think of a million scenarios where that could be wrong, right? But I am going to make the claim here that everyone deported here did receive due process, and then I would start to reference previous cases, the Garcia, etc., to be like, well, was due process done? As far as we can tell, it was, or if it was not, right, I would proffer the following thing, which is like, well, okay, if that was, and that doesn't excuse the bad action, agree, but can we just have a call on what is it called? Sorry,
Zoom,
not
Skype,
Skype,
Zoom. I know what you're
Zooms. I
talking
was going
about.
to say Skype, but I was like, shit, that was like 10 years ago. But like, if we had a
Video
Zoom, and
conference.
that's
I
what they
get
do
you.
normally. I was involved in a criminal trial just 2 days ago as a bystander. Right. This all goes through Zooms these days. It's not necessarily meaning you need to go in person. Go in person. So if we just had a Zoom call with him, 10 minutes long, we say, no, you're rejected for these reasons. We're not going to fly him back up here and fly him back down. Would that be due process, in your opinion?
It could
And I'm
be.
not trying to change the topic, but to Diego Garcia specifically, because it was such a
Again,
highlighted story
it's
on the
yeah,
side.
it could be. It could be. It depends on the details around that. But I don't necessarily need to think he needs to be returned. However, the Supreme Court said he did. He needed to be released from the prison and returned, right? That's what they
No,
ruled
no,
on
no, no. They said he needed.
specifically.
They said his release needed to be facilitated. We both know there's a lot of argument about what that means.
I understand his release and return so that he could have. So here's the thing, right? You're gonna stick to this Garcia case, but the only reason we're talking about Garcia is because he got into the mainstream media, right? He got into the news. The problem with CECOT specifically, and the problem with these these alleged people who were imprisoned, is that, well, I guess, do you think that due process means that you have to be given the right to respond to the allegations against you. So say if the government says, hey, real American citizen, you're an illegal alien and we're going to deport you. Do you think that you should have the right to answer that charge?
I think that in certain
You shouldn't.
in certain specific situations, no, it does not require you to have the ability to respond.
Okay, you're just wrong.
Which I know sounds wild, but no, in my view of it, there should be absolutely, because yes, like when you're, in my view of the world, in my view of America, if you're granted, for example, if you're granted a visa here, and when you go to write out that visa application, you say certain things, you commit to certain things. If you were to break those commitments, do I think that due process involves you going and having a trial?
I didn't say anything about a trial.
Okay, or a hearing.
To
right?
go up in front of a representative of the government and say, hey, the charges against me, they say I broke this immigration. They say I lied on my visa forms or whatever. I'm saying I'm not, and here's the proof that I'm not. Do you think that everyone should be granted the right to that?
I do not.
Okay,
I do
the Supreme Court disagrees with you. In Landon versus Plasencia, oh, all these names, dude. Plasencia in 1982, they ruled that the establishment of due process for procedural due process means you get the right to a meaningful opportunity to be heard, and this applies to non-citizens. This applies to immigrants.
Opportunity
to be heard, to respond to that, which means
to be heard,
to respond to the charges against you. When they say you did it, you need the opportunity to say, no, I didn't, and here's my answer to you. It doesn't have to be in front of a jury. It doesn't have to take a long process, but you need the opportunity to be able to respond.
Okay.
Okay, that is part of due process. That was denied to the people who were deported to CECOT on March 15th. They did not get that opportunity. For sure?
I don't think we know that for sure.
They are not allowed to speak to their lawyers.
If only they were able to. If you're saying, Wick, if you're saying that all they needed to do to have due process was to be heard.
No, there's other things too, but this is part of it, and this is one portion that they were denied to. They were denied.
Okay. To that point only. To only that point. Maybe there's more things that they are due, you feel, under due process. But for specific that one, they have the duty to be heard.
The ability to be heard.
Ability to be heard.
Right? So the right to respond to the charges. Yes, the right to say, correct. I'm not here illegally. I'm not a member of this gang. I'm not what the government is telling you.
Some ability to respond to the claim against them.
Yes.
So we're saying these people were charged, have no ability to respond to the claim.
Yes, that is the claim I'm making. And the evidence I'm using for this claim is that the people who are put in CECOT are not allowed to talk to their families. They're not allowed to talk to their lawyers. They're not allowed to talk to anyone. How can you respond to the government if you are not allowed to speak to a lawyer, to speak to anyone at all?
The claim is that the due process happened before they got sent to CECOT, right? The claim is that the due process happened before. And here's the reason that I'm going to use the Diego example is because I think it's the most fitting example where we're talking and we're making opinions about things really early in the fog of information. We're making strong opinions. Would you still hold the strong opinions that you did, that you've streamed, etc., about Diego Garcia? I promise I'm going to relate this argument. I'm not going to make this like a big thing.
Yes, I still think that the government violated Garcia's rights, even if he was a gangbanger or a wife beater or whatever. They did not go through the proper process, and they violated his order withholding of deportation towards El Salvador. They violated that. They admit to violating that, right? You understand that the government admits that they violated his withholding attempt. They violated his due process. He went through the due process. He was given this in his due process. The judges gave him this withholding of deportation, okay, to this specific country, and that was violated by the government, and they admit that they did that.
So if we have the Zoom trial of Diego Garcia for whatever you think, whatever due process you think he was not awarded, we do it in a Zoom trial. In the next whatever day, we can make this happen lickety split. Would you be okay with the ending of the situation? I mean, I know you would still have,
Yeah, if that's what the courts
problems.
decide, that's what the courts decide. But here's the deal, right? They're not doing that. They're not even doing that.
What do you mean?
They're not. Have they had a Zoom trial with him?
Well, okay. Well, correct. Okay. So, but I'm trying to get to like the argument on Diego so that we can use it. This is the way I will plan to argue this case, right? Is that we will take the case of Diego and we will use it to model these 50 people who are, they're not illegal. Well, Diego wasn't illegal either, right? And so my case is and they spent weeks and weeks
No,
on this media
Diego came in
narrative,
here illegally.
you included.
Hold on. Everyone agrees that he came in here illegally in 2012. Like, we know that.
Hmm.
That's not what's being disputed here, whether he's
Would you
legal or
consider him?
illegal.
Would you consider him illegal?
Yeah, he's an illegal
You would.
immigrant. But they still
Okay.
get due process. The charge I am making, the
Okay.
charge that this report is showing, is that at least 50 of these people were not here illegally. They were not illegal immigrants. They came in mostly through the CBP-1 app, which was a legal process that was put in to apply for asylum, refugee status, host of other visas that you could apply for. And they scheduled a date at the port of entry. They came through the port of entry, and they were allowed to be here. They were legal immigrants.
Right. Would you agree with me that, as far as we can tell, all 50 of them, as my point one in the tweet responds to, all 50 of them were here on temporary visas. They're not citizens.
They're
We're
not
not talking about
citizens.
deporting American citizens. We're talking about visa holders. Is that fair? Can
Sure.
we agree?
Okay, but I don't think
Okay.
that matters to my point. Whether they're on visas or whether they're lawful permanent residents, they are not illegal immigrants. Do you agree with that?
Correct.
Okay, and
Correct. They're
because they
not
are not
illegal
illegal
immigrants.
immigrants, the government said that they were deporting these people to a prison, okay? They didn't just revoke their visas and send them back to their home countries. I'm not even sure if they revoked their visas, but let's assume they did. They took away their visas and they sent them to a prison without allowing them a chance to respond, without allowing the chance to get counsel if they so desired, right? Without giving them notice to why they were being deported in many cases, or their families notice to why they were being deported in many cases, and they still have yet to release the full list of the people that they have done. You know that, right? We don't know precisely who all they sent there because the government refuses to tell us.
So I don't know the full list of people that have been deported.
No
I don't
one
have that.
does. That's the problem.
And so we're both going to come into this position with different biases. Both of us not having enough information, right?
Hold on.
And
I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. I do have enough information here because the report that was released went through the public information that we do have available, and they were able to see how many were legal, how many were here illegal, how many they don't
it doesn't
know
matter.
about, right? We were able to make.
That's only one part. That's only one part. Whether they're here on a visa, whether they're here illegally, that's only one single part. Right, because listen, this is the reason, Wick, that I continually reference the Diego thing. It's not to be like a I own you thing. It's to point out that the information that you're receiving is not complete. It's not complete.
Can
And
we make
you're
inferences
making
based on incomplete information?
sure you can try, but you should, when you're making those, you should know that they're made on incomplete information. You might not be correct.
Okay, if the
And this is the
information
reason I cite the
changes,
Diego thing.
if you can show
Because
me.
the argument, if I can, Wick, please, real quick, real fast, is just that the I watched all the streams. I watched leftist media more than I watch right. When the Diego thing happened, everyone was like, "The sky is falling." It's the biggest problem ever. But not anymore, right? You're not gonna defend anymore because the information, so much information about his crime has come out. The only thing you're able to defend now is that, well, sure, he will be deported. Of course, he'll be deported no matter what happens. But he should have got a hearing. He should have got a hearing. Is kind of where
Hold
you're
on.
arguing. And then when
No.
I say, well, if we just give him that hearing and we'll do it virtually, he doesn't need to leave CECOT. We'll do it right at CECOT from America. We'll do a Zoom meeting. In your that should satisfy on your end due process being fulfilled.
When the government breaks the law and violates a citizen's or non-citizen's due process, do you think that there should be accountability for that?
Yes.
Yes. So, for example, when they broke when they violated the due process of Bill Cosby, the remedy for that was both a remedy for Bill Cosby, whose rights had been violated, as well as a punishment to the government, right, by releasing him. One of the things that happens here is behavior that is rewarded is repeated. If the government can get away with violating Garcia's, even a bad guy's, due process, they will continue to do so. So it is very important that when the government violates someone's rights, that the government be punished for that. The courts have decided that they want Garcia, right, to be released from CECOT, which again, the government claims they can't do, right? And that's
That's
being
not what they
litigated.
claimed. That's not what they claimed at
They
all.
did. We can read the case. Here, I got
We
this
can
up.
read it.
Here, I'll just read this. The government does not contest before this court the application's description of the notice afforded to AEA detainees in the Northern District of Texas, nor the assert that the government was poised to carry out removals imminently. The government has represented it elsewhere that it is unable to provide for the return of an individual deported in error to a prison in El Salvador. See Abrego Garcia versus Noam, where it is alleged that detainees face indefinite detention. See the application for injunction 11. The detainees' interests at stake are accordingly particularly weighty. So again, they have the courts, this is Supreme Court of the United States, has said, right, that they are that the government is alleging that they are unable to provide for the return of an individual deported in error to a prison in El Salvador, which means, again, as they're saying in this decision, which they ruled, providing habeas or due process to people who are deported under Aliens Enemies Act, which some of those who were deported on March 15th to CECOT prison were done under the Alien Enemies Act. Not all of them, but a good portion of them. They are saying that the government did not provide them due process. That is the alleged quote here.
So we're referring again to the Diego case.
Yes, the Diego, again,
that,
as I meant, the Abrego Garcia, that's Diego, right? Abrego Garcia was sent in error to a prison in El Salvador, and the government is unable to provide for his return. That's what the government claims, that they're unable to provide to his return. Which, do you believe that? Do you believe that the government
no,
wanted it?
no. If Trump told him to bring him back tomorrow, he'd bring him back tomorrow.
Exactly, right? Which is the problem.
But it's not the problem because, I mean, why? What would be the purpose of that? What would be the point of that? Because this is what I was telling you before, right? Is like certainly the due process. If you think the due process was violated, I think you can make a decent argument for that in Diego's case. But the argument can be solved easily with a single Zoom hearing, and then the like no, and there's a more technical legal term for this, right? But that like the no harm, nothing has changed. The outcome would not have changed. Therefore, the government was not in error.
But it is important.
Argument.
It is important. Well, they'd have to.
Well, give me any deference on your side.
Sure.
Would you agree? Would you agree that if they did the Zoom hearing, with him, would due process be fulfilled?
For him, but it would also it would let the government off the hook in a way that I don't think they should be let off the hook. I think it should cost the government for their error. I think the government should pay a price for their error. And the price I think that they should pay is, at the very least, returning him, having the hearing here, right? And then they can process it however they like. But again, they're not even, I want to stress this, you recognize that they're not even doing that. The government is not even doing that bare minimum that you suggest.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not
Correct.
yet. They're not doing it. In fact, they're fighting the courts so that they don't have to do that. They're
fighting the courts for future precedent.
For future precedent, because they want to violate people's due process more. Well, yes, that's true. I agree. And I oppose that. And this is what they're doing to the people who were sent to CECOT, right? They denied them the ability to have any sort of response to these people, right? To say, hey, no, I'm not a member of Tren de Agua, and here's why I'm not a member of Tren de Agua.
I think the better argument the liberals have is like, why are we sending anyone out of the country at all? But when you like, that would be the better argument.
I'm not against deportations.
But right, if we're going to do that, then I don't understand where the problem is at, because it would be essentially, in the eyes of the law, as far as I can see it, it would be, you were here, you were deported. The United States government considered you deportable in some way, right? Your visa just got revoked. You are gonna get deported, right? And we're dealing with, well, should they be deported? Are they allowed to be deported? But we already have those answers, and we're like, well, why were they deported? Shouldn't they have like a fair hearing on why they were deported? And the answer to that, as far as I can tell, is no. That's not a requirement. And due process in America does not require that you get a hearing if you're here on a visa. You do not get a specific type of hearing to be like, well, when you considered my visa invalid and therefore put me on deportation, well, you were wrong. You only have a certain avenue to combat that. And it's not the avenue that a United States citizen has.
Your premise is flawed. They aren't just deporting these people, right? They're not giving them a plane ticket and sending them to their home country where they are released.
They're sending them to prison first.
They're saying, yes, that's the key. They're sending them to prison. They're sending them to a foreign prison, which we do not apparently have the ability to get anyone back out of, or at least that's what the government is alleging. This is far, far worse and far, far more serious, and requires far, far more due process than simply sending them out of the country. It absolutely does, and the Supreme Court agrees with me, sir. And this is what we have precedent on. If you are going, why are you okay with the government being able to snatch people up, not give them any sort of reason why they're being snatched up, not informing any of their families, not allowing them to contact a lawyer, contact any representation, simply putting them in a van, putting them on a plane, and sending them to a foreign prison for who knows how long? Why are you okay with that?
If and believe me, all I'm going to do is be honest with you. That's why I'm like a no name. I don't have no complications with what I say necessarily, as compared to many other people. So I'll be more honest with you than others would. There's a part of this, right? Part of this is, of course, I would agree with your argument, but another part of this is that the problem has gone too far, and people who find themselves in the marks of the government, if you will, and this almost I can almost hear it right now. This sounds Nazistic or something like this, but Joe Biden, when we had creating such an illegal immigration crisis in the country, would always require bad, potentially bad answers. Now, we know, both me and you know, that Biden, or excuse me, for example, Obama and Biden deported millions and millions of people, right? And then you would come back to me and say, well, they never did it like this. They never did it like this. But I don't agree with you. I think you're wrong. You haven't said that, to be fair, right? But I'm just going to argue that opinion really quickly. Is to say, I think most people are very, very partisan in their heads. We all know that when our guy does it, it's not so bad. When their guy does it, oh my God, it's the worst thing. I'm going to argue strongly on the favor that nothing that we're doing with deporting people is really against the American ethos. And also, if it was, that ethos has changed now because of Joe Biden and because of the actual crisis here, where we are now being told that there's so many illegal immigrants here that it's just not even possible to maintain law. We can't even remove it. It's not possible to maintain the law anymore in terms of immigration. And I think that's false. I think it's wrong. I've seen so many lies, so many lies that are in only in favor of politics and in favor of political power, that I think it's fair for the American people to distrust the information that they're getting. And that's why I bring up the
Why do you
Diego thing, because
trust? Why do you trust the government so much that they're given when they say that they're doing nothing wrong here and and that these people are gangbangers? Why do you trust the government when they say that?
the government says they're all gangbangers.
Yes, that was the claim made. They were saying these people are part of Tren de Agua and we're sending them to CECOT because they're a threat. They're invading the United States. That's their claim. Why do
Their
you
claim
trust
in
that?
reference to the 50 people that you're talking about,
To the
or what? Where
240
like
people that they deported.
narrow the
Yeah,
context for me.
we're talking about specifically on March 15th when the Trump administration rounded up around 240 people, put them on a plane, and sent them to CECOT. They claimed that some of them were deported via the Alien Enemies Act, others were deported via INA, right? But they were all sent to CECOT. The claim was by the government that they were dangerous gangbangers from Tren de Agua, that they had in MS-30. No, I think it was Tren de Agua specifically, and they had to send them there, right? That was the claim. Why do you
My
trust the government that they are not lying to you?
Sure. Well, I think it would be similar to the answer that I gave you, right? Which is that when my guy is in power, will you trust what they're doing more, right? And you give them more leverage. Just like, if your guy is in there, maybe you identify with Biden or you don't, but when your guy is in there, you give them more deference to the problems, right? That's just true. As far as I can tell, that's just human behavior. I'm implicated as well as everybody else. Right. But as far as I know, and this is the opinion that I voted for and the one I will defend, is that Trump, I feel, is on the side of America. He's not an evil guy, a bad guy. People can absolutely disagree with him. A lot of people would say he's like a 90s Democrat. So it's hard to make these stupid, crazy opinions. But as far as I can tell, I trust his direction until I see better, clear evidence that they're just picking people up and fucking throwing them out of the country and sending them in airplanes, sending them to prisons.
So
Until I can see better evidence of that, I err on the side that the media has been lying, as it always does, as it lied with Diego Garcia in the same fucking case. They lied about it. This is just 3 or 4 weeks ago. You made shows about it, etc. Everyone made shows. Everyone jumped up in opinion. Oh my God, CNBC said, right? Eh, I'm telling you, that as someone who is a longer term right leaning supporter, you must be more careful with the media. You have to be more careful with what they're doing and what they're telling you. And so I bias on the side. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I bias on the side that every single number 1 through number 50 on the list that you have, all of them violated. They did something because there's
okay, what did they
millions of
do?
people. Well, I don't know exactly. Do you know exactly?
I am claiming that they did nothing. That they did nothing,
They
or
did
there at least
nothing.
there's
They're
been
just
no
picked up
evidence
randomly.
provided that they've done
But
anything.
you made those kind of claims about Diego. Like, why did they get him?
My claim about Diego was that whether or not he did anything, it does not matter. Diego specifically had a withholding of deportation to El Salvador, and they violated that withholding of deportation to El Salvador, and they admitted that they violated their withholding of deportation to El Salvador. I was not here saying I don't care if he was a rapist or not. I don't care if he was a serial killer. I don't care. They violated his due process, and even rapists and serial killers get due process in this country, even if they're non-citizens. And I think that matters. You want evidence, right? I don't think that there could be, to not trust this administration. I think the clearest evidence that you cannot trust this administration is this incident, because again, we have compelling evidence that was in this report, and I encourage everyone to go read it, that there was no, due process followed for the deportation of these individuals. And we know at least, because again, in the report, it goes through this, they couldn't even find information on a lot of these guys, right? But at least for the 80 that they were able to find, the 84, I should say, sorry, I want to be specific here, the 84 that they were able to find, 50 of them were not illegal immigrants, and they had no criminal record and no ties to Tren de Agua.
Yeah, but that certainly you would understand. You would at least find some agreement with me that they don't have to be illegal to get deported. This is the whole point of the temporary status of visas. So if the government came out and said, we have great reason for why all 50 of these visas were revoked, would you read into that reason and potentially agree with them or not?
The people who are being deported and detained, again, they weren't just sent out of the country. I want to make this very clear, and I want to keep harping on it because it's important. They weren't just had their visas revoked and given a plane ticket and released. They were sent to prison, and that requires a higher level of due diligence from the government to show that we have the right we should imprison these guys. Again, we are paying, the American taxpayer, the U.S. taxpayer, is paying El Salvador to hold and imprison these guys, right? You understand?
Mm-hmm.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Again.
Yes, I agree with that.
The government should have to prove, or at least, at the very least, let the people that they are sending there answer and respond to any charges levied against them. If they say, hey, you're a member of Tren de Agua, they should have the chance to say, no, I am not, and here is evidence that I am not. I am not alleging or asking that they go through a full 12-person jury trial that lasts months and months and months. That's not what has to happen. But the bare minimum, the absolute bare minimum, is that they have to be able to go in front of a neutral arbiter, right, who is able to hear their response to the government's charges. That is due process. That is what is required in due process for even non-citizens, for even immigrants. And Trump has violated that.
I'm just not so sure that that's really honestly true. So let's take, and I hate to keep using it as an example, but just because it's so common, we all know the facts of the case. That's the reason I use this as an example, right? So in the Diego case, would you say, because when the media first started reporting on the story, they said there's no evidence, he's a Maryland man. And then you learned that there was court trials where the judges themselves said, yes, we determine as the judge of the immigration court that he is tied to MS-13. Would you agree with that? Because I'm going to have to go point. I can tell now.
That was alleged, but
it wasn't. Did that happen or not?
It wasn't within the scope of the judgments.
Did the judges? They did determine he was MS-13.
No, there was no determination on that. You understand that, right? That the reason he went to court wasn't to determine whether or not he was this, right? That wasn't
but did the judges
decided upon? They were deciding upon whether he was going to be deported, right? And they said that you can be deported. Right, and they said, hey, you can deport him. Government, it's okay to deport him. But then Garcia appealed.
It's okay to deport him?
Hold on, let me finish because I think this is important. Garcia said, I want to appeal this. He was allowed to appeal it, which was part of due process. And in the appeal, The judge decided that they are going to recognize they're going to issue him a withholding from deportation to this specific country, El Salvador. If they had come and taken him and sent him to any other country, then the government would have been fine, right? They would not have violated his due process. But because they sent him to the one country that they were not supposed to, they violated his due process. That is not, everything else is a distraction from that main point. So anything about him beating his wife, him being a gangbanger, him not being a gangbanger, him being an innocent Maryland man, all that's fluff. None of that matters. What matters at the heart of this, at the end of the day, is can the government violate your rights, which they did in this case. And I am alleging they did in at least 50 other cases.
Okay. And so this is why, I mean, the argument is obvious because there's not really many points changing from your side. And so that's why I introduced early on to ask the question, can we solve it with the Zoom hearing? You said, yes, we could, but it was still in violation.
Yes,
right?
and again, the government has to pay a price. The government, we should not we should punish the government when the government does something wrong. Do you agree with that principally?
I certainly agree with that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
When the government does something wrong, when someone within the government does something wrong and they violate the law, they should be held accountable. What that looks like depends on the violation of the law, how severe the violation of the law is, how pernicious it was, etc., etc., etc. I am claiming my whole statement here is that we have evidence that this isn't just an isolated incident, that this is a pattern of behavior that the Trump administration is engaging in, where they're routinely ignoring the due process for at least a couple hundred people and deporting them to a foreign prison where they have acknowledged that they have no ability to get people back from. That is something the government should be punished harshly for.
I think the main sticking point, if I to be honest, right, that you guys have is he cannot be repatriated. I think that there's a very good argument there, very good argument, but I don't think it's going to change. Right. So if we ultimately get down to the point of, yes, Diego Sanchez shouldn't be here, but if we give him the Zoom trial, he'll have fair process. Okay, all we need to do with these other 50 people is just give them their fair process and it'll be fine. I think you're battling a very losing argument here because what you want to do, as far as I can tell, is actually challenge every one of the 50, challenge every single one of these things and be like, well, was there government? Can you prove to me you should have? And here I think you enter the very losing position of the entire argument. And this is why, in general, people on the left are, I don't know why, picking losing arguments where they think they have a technical answer, like with the trans argument. They think they have like a technical boom. You can't really get past that point, boom. But it doesn't matter when you're choosing arguments that most people disagree with at their basis. They will never get into the details of it because the whole question is so crazy. And so when we're this is what I think is that we're on the left where you're having this question where it's like, well, this guy didn't get this. They should have never started with Garcia. They should have started with someone way simpler.
They didn't. They started with the man who was deported, the gay hairdresser who was deported because he had tattoos.
And why did Garcia get more attention than that story?
I don't know why that was. Oh, because the government admitted they messed up. That's what made it caught fire.
And therefore that was the either way. Then it's in that case it sounds like Trump played everybody or something like this, right? Because it's like now I think the main thing that Trump, one of his main campaign promises, and one of the main things that he is said to do through his entire thing, is to treat immigration differently. He's been saying that since 2016, and it's only gotten more aggressive now. I think somehow this happened that they were able to optically frame for the left. They were able to, they were able to get you guys to defend the worst person that you could ever imagine.
I
Not the worst.
defend the
I'm sure
devil
there's way. He's not a
himself.
murderer,
I
etc.
would defend
But they've
I want to
got you.
make this clear. I would defend the devil himself because defending his rights defends my rights. You
That's
understand
fine.
that?
That's a perfectly logical argument.
Okay. So when you say, right? So when you say that like, oh, I think this is a losing argument, I hope you're wrong. I hope that most people recognize, at least in this country, right? I hope that most people recognize that due process is an important thing, that the rule of law is important, that when the rule of law is violated, even by people who are very powerful and very popular, that they should be held accountable for their violation and that a remedy should be applied. I hope that's true. I don't know if that's true, but if it's not true,
It's
we're in a
not
very
true.
dark place. We're in a very dark place because what that means, right, is that when the Democrats take back power, it's going to be you guys who are being deported to foreign prisons.
But we know
Because
that
you've already
the
alleged
lie is
that due
pretend that this
process
is
doesn't
new with
matter.
Trump. The lie is to pretend this is new with Trump. So what? I mean, do you feel like the
Hold on.
trials that went
I
against
don't
Trump
hold
were
on.
very
If
valid
you're
trials?
arguing
Like
that
we've
I'm saying
been
that
doing
no other
lawfare
president,
with this.
hold on, just real quick. If you're saying that I am saying that no other president has ever violated the rule of law or due process, you're wrong. Trump is
I'm
the
not saying
worst
that.
offender, not the sole offender.
Okay, but we've this is certainly we've been engaged in this as far as I can tell. I'm in my 30s. I've only been watching politics since about 2015. Trump
Okay.
made everyone pay more
What
attention.
other president
But
has
as far
sent
as
people to foreign prisons, deported them directly to foreign prisons?
none that I know of.
Okay, that's what makes this bad. Again, if Trump, if
No,
all he was doing was putting them
no.
on a plane and sending them out of the country, we would probably not even have this discussion right now. It probably would be just like a much more muted affair. But the fact that he's sending them to foreign prisons where they can't get them back from raises the stakes significantly. It's a
I
problem
don't think
for
it does.
me. It's why I'm coming out very hard against it. And I see your super chats. We'll read them in a second, gang. Don't worry. We are getting to the kind of the end, so I'm going to give you the mic for the last portion. Give us again. Let's go back to the tweet here. You called me a liar, right? You said I was misrepresenting these points. Do you stand by that?
I think you're misrepresenting them. I would not use the term. I think liar is a little offensive in
I mean,
my
you called me
opinion.
a liar.
I did say it. I did say it. Absolutely. To be a little bit provocative, because I think you're not telling the truth about those points. I think lying is more
Well, you
intentional.
have the
I
next
think you're
5 minutes or the
misunderstanding.
next 2 minutes to explain why your closing statement, and then I do have to get ready for my panel in like 5 minutes. So 2 minutes closing
Sure,
statement. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. And we it seems like we never really got anywhere on agreement on the in the discussion here. So maybe we could do it in the future. Maybe you don't like talking to me. I don't know. But as far as I can tell, I would consider this is the trouble with media in the modern day is that people say things that are, you know, edgy and biased in their direction. And then the other side can say that's a lie. That's a lie. It's an intentional lie. And this is not exclusive to the right or the left. Both sides are doing this. What I was pointing out is that the way that you framed this position was a lie. It was a lie in terms of how the argument goes. Now, I think you're an honest person. We try to get into some of it, and maybe we got derailed on a little couple of things. But as far as I can tell, it's not representing the argument properly to say 50 not illegal immigrants got deported. Well, a lot of not illegal but temporary residents are getting deported because they violated the application for their visas, right? And this is just one small part of it, one small part. And so I think it's totally you're trying to push the narrative that something very illegal is happening. I'm trying to tell you, I tried to tell you in bigger words, bigger, maybe higher level looking at it, not so specific to this specific argument, that the American people view this as getting rid of people who should not be here. Now, we're both going to be biased in different directions. I'm more biased in Trump direction. You might be more biased in Democrat direction. My bias would say, as far until I receive good evidence, everyone being deported, visa holder or illegal immigrants, they've done something that the government can defend to deport them. I'm not a big pro-Alice Israel person. I imagine that a lot of the visa holders in the thing that you're talking about probably got deported for either a crime or pro-Palestine positions. I don't agree with necessarily deporting for pro-Palestine, but the argument still makes sense in my head that if you come here on a temporary visa status and you say, I'm not going to make any problems with America, then you do have grounds for deportation. Part of this is the Israel lobby. I'm not in favor of it.
Okay.
That's my final point. Thank you for
Again,
having
as
me,
I
Wick.
said, I respect anyone who comes up and is willing to challenge my takes. I'm willing to have you on again. There is no hard feelings, but I just want to make it clear before I send you to the void here that you're simply wrong. They have not violated any immigration law, right? They have not lied on their visas. That's not even the allegation being made against them. The
How
Ozturk,
could you know that?
right? I don't have to prove they didn't. The government has to prove they did. The government has to at least show evidence that they did,
True.
and the evidence that they
True. You
have not
said the same
provided
thing with
any.
Diego, and
They have
then
not
they
shown
showed the
any.
evidence. And then they showed the evidence, and you had to back away from the argument.
Hold on, they showed evidence that he was perhaps an
Deportable.
MS-13 guy, but that's not why they deported him, right? That's not why they snatched him up. And again, they admitted that they deported him to the wrong country. They deported him to the country he should not have gone to a prison, right? And I think they should be held accountable for that. Thank you for coming on, buddy. I will see you later.
Take care of me, Wick. Have a good night.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen. Rough one there. Rough one. What do you think, gang? Well, once again, right? We have a report that was released just recently, I think today, right? That showed on March 15th, when the government rounded up about 240 alleged Tren de Agua members and sent them to CECOT prison, right? Where, again, they have no ability to contact their lawyer. The government has acknowledged they can't get them out. They were not allowed to respond to those charges. They were not allowed to present evidence to challenge the government's charges. SCOTUS has ruled that they have to be allowed these things, and the government did not allow them, right? And we're not talking about 3 or 4 cases. We're not talking about 5 or 6 cases of oops, whoops, we got it wrong. We're talking 50, at least. 50. Not even illegal immigrants. That is stunning in its audacity. Stunning in its audacity. And we, the American government, the American taxpayer, you are paying El Salvador to keep these people in a prison known for its human rights violations. This is horrific. Okay, let's read some of these and then we'll bring in the panelists, okay? We'll be a bit of change. So let me read some of these super chats. $20 from Alexander Rin. Thank you for the $20. Says, why does it feel like these matter MAGAs are good with post hoc rationalizing deportations and jailing? Why do they trust the government so much? Arrest first, jail second, trial too late. Oh, thank you for the $20. $10 from Alexander Rin. Thank you for the $10. Wick TV, can you ask him under whose direction these people are imprisoned and in what country they were given a trial? Sorry, I didn't get a chance to ask him that directly. Thank you for the $10 anyway. Then, finally, $5 from Zephyr Hash. Wick, I finally understand it. It's the left's fault, you see. 50 people were denied due process because the left is bad at arguments. Well, thank you for the $5. Thank you. Okay, and with that, let's bring in some of these yappers, okay? Some of the wonderful guests I've invited today. Doop, 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 doop. Hello, friends. You're live, by the way. People can see you and people can hear you. I can't hear you, though. So maybe we can't hear you. Is your mic on or mic muted or something?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just getting.
I'm an idiot. I think I bumped that accidentally. Anyway.
Did you guys watch my little debate there? A little impromptu discussion.
I missed it. I was just setting up for this one.
I was just curious. Fair enough. No, I didn't know I was going to be debating either until the guy challenged me. But
What
there was a
about?
report. For those of you who don't know, right? There's a report released today saying that at least 50 of the people who were sent to CECOT on March 15th, when they rounded up a bunch of people and sent them to the foreign prison on that airplane, at least 50 weren't given their due process, weren't illegal immigrants, and they weren't members of Gente Agua. So the government just fucking lied, as they often do. And yeah, it's a problem for me. And we're not talking 3 or 4. We're not talking 5 or 6. We're talking 50 at least of the 240 that were sent that day. But I have to use the restroom real quick. I'll let you guys entertain my audience for a moment, and then we will be right back and we'll start the show. Sound good? Sound good. Give me 1 second, okay, ladies and gentlemen? I'll be right back.
I think I really only know my opponents, Lactoid and Gibbs here. It's been a bit.
Yeah.
It's been a bit.
I've seen you around, but I've never spoken to you.
Me?
Staxioms, but
Stax?
yeah.
Gotcha.
No, me. I don't know who this Nonfon kid is either.
Is it 3 libs, 2 cons? Is that the... I don't know. I actually don't even know who I just assume
think-
Lactoid and Gibbs are...
I think so, but JC, you did say you're like half on their side for this one, right?
Yeah, I think I'm taking the honorary tuna fish slot for this week.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Is what it seems like I've fallen into.
That's better than the honorary snake oil Nazi point slot. So
Oof.
steps up. Hey, we can't miss one opportunity to roast them when we got in.
What view I don't.
Oh, are you just all sitting in silence?
Yeah.
Ah,
Wow.
Out here.
Wow.
yeah,
I'm
we just
preparing,
went
Wick.
to the
I'm preparing. Sorry that I'm trying to make your stream more enjoyable later.
Jesus
by
Christ. Okay. Well, we're here now. Sorry for the wait, guys. Usually I take care of all that before the show, but again, I had to debate this guy on the CECOT stuff, so I didn't get a chance. But hey, now we're going to switch tracks. Welcome, everyone, one and all, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Gang, today we've got a show for you. Oh my goodness, the news has been rife lately with juicy stuff. But from Comey's 8647 tweets to the knowledge that Biden apparently has prostate cancer, and many on the left deciding that they were going to cheer for this, and many on the right alleging conspiracy. It's been a lot. Today's topics. Today, we're going to talk about left-wing violence. Is it an actual real problem in America, or is it being overblown? Is it being blown out of proportion by the Trump administration and MAGA and stuff in order to try to paint the left as a violent group of criminals, etc.? We have brought a wonderful group of guests here to discuss that and I $5 before we do that from Zephyr Hash to say, Wick, is it going to be a left violence is nothing compared to right violence versus all violence is bad panel? Well, we're going to find out. I'm going to give the mic first to Nonfon, and all these people are going to have a brief introduction, tell people who you are, and opening thoughts on the matter, and then we'll just kind of go around the room. Sound good? Sound good? Nonfon, open us up. Give us what you got. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Nonfon. I'm a lib left streamer. You can check me out on YouTube at Nonfon, Nonfon. I do a lot of debates like this, and I think typically left-wing violence is overblown by the right. It's not to say that there aren't any issues, especially I think the left did really bad during 2020, during the whole BLM thing. But stating that any of this like 86-47 stuff is actually serious or gonna like inspire violence, I think is stupid. And I think more generally, rather than left-right, violence is a lot of times better understood as like pro-establishment versus anti-establishment. Like I think there's a decent amount of like anti-establishment people on the right who you also see supporting things like Luigi doing what he did.
Okay, thank you for being here. We're going to get into it as we go. Let's go with Lactoid. No stranger to the show, but it's been a bit. Welcome back. Oh, you're muted on your end, buddy. On the Discord.
How about now? Am I going through okay?
Yep, you're good. You're good.
All right, sick. All right, so whether or not it's like being overblown, I guess would really depend on who's doing the talking. Do I think that the left in this country is like Satan worshippers that are plotting the doom of society? No, I think that'd be like a little bit extreme if somebody takes that position. Do I think that the violence that the left perpetuates is significant and serious and is not necessarily taken as seriously as it should be? I think that's probably is the case. I think the most expensive riots in history just occurred during the BLM riots that were mentioned here by Nonfon. We have a significant amount of damage, deaths, and large amounts of injuries. This was either tacitly or even overtly supported by a lot of Democrat politicians at the time. We also have three-fourths of Democrats thinking that Rittenhouse should have gotten convicted for defending himself against a violent attacker, thus implicitly supporting the violent attacker. This is three-fourths of Democrats. You also have a large amount of leftists generally, or people who swing left, supporting the shooting of Brian Thompson, which I think is pretty disgusting. And then there's all the violence coming from Antifa, the fact that a third of Democrats say that would have been a good thing if Trump had actually gotten shot. And just generally, violent felons are just by and large more likely to be Democrats. I think that there is a sort of implicit violence and an internalized violence on the left that just doesn't get enough credit. Of course, there's violence on both sides. I think that's fair. I think it's fair to point out. I just think that the left sort of sells themselves to this kind of like hippie, nonviolent, tolerant sort of organization, or I guess alignment, when in reality it's not.
Okay, thank you for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Next up, also no stranger to my panels, the one, the only, not a general, right? Not a colonel, but the AdmiralGibbs.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always good to be here. Love coming. It's always fun. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the left is got a violence problem right now. Lactoid mentioned the BLM riots. Basically, I like to call it the BLM insurrection, where they actually took over land in one of the major cities. People died. I think the numbers were like something like 1 to 2 billion in direct damage, 20 billion over the next 10 to 20 years is what it's looking like the projections are. Awful stuff. I mean, we can just look at Democrat commentators on major news networks actively calling for the deaths of refugees fleeing a genocide in South Africa. It's crazy. They're actively doing this. Big fans, I guess. We've seen one of the guys with tangential connections to BlackRock, and they donated Dem Party, shoot at one of our presidents. We saw another guy, avid Ukraine supporter, has some other left-wing tendency beliefs. He tried to shoot at Trump by his golf course. And then third, we all know how much the Dems love Iranian-backed terrorist groups. Well, Iran seemed to have also taken a pot shot at the president, and I would say that's tangentially we can give that to the left as their fault. So overall, they just support terrorism in general. So it's no surprise when terrorism happens at home. And I got to say, yeah, they have a problem, and I think people are recognizing that this is a problem when 2 in 5 Tesla owners are saying they've had their vehicle vandalized. Now that's crazy. crazy because a few years ago people were buying Teslas to save the environment, and now 2 out of every 5 of those people are having their shit damaged, because they thought going green was a good thing. But I digress. Yeah, the leftists, y'all are violent, terroristic individuals, and why would y'all support someone like Hassan that has literal terrorist on his channel talking? If y'all weren't terrorists yourselves.
Okay. Send me one of them group chat invites or whatever, right? Like you know what I'm talking about, so we can share the chat and share the wealth. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here. I guess we'll get into it as we go. Next up, first time guest on my show, Pottsdavidg. What is Potts?
That is correct. Yes, that's fine.
Potts.
It's just my name.
Okay. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Potts.
So, hello. I'm new. Excited to be here. Hope to represent the left pretty well. My position. First of all, you can find me on YouTube. Same name, Pottsdavidg. And my position here will be pretty simple. I'm not saying that left-wing violence doesn't exist. I'm not saying that left-wing violence can't be dangerous. But what I am going to say is that it is nowhere near the most pressing issue that some people on the right make it out to be. And I think that it is, no matter what examples we go over and talk about in this debate, that it will not be, it'll fall into one of 3 categories. First up, it won't actually be an example of left-wing violence, broadly supported by the left, or no major organization or political party, meaning Democrats, PACs, other political groups, or any, position in power will support this or endorse it. They will call it out. They will say that it's bad, and they will agree that it shouldn't be happening. Or it will be nowhere near as bad as January 6th. There is just no example like that ever on the left of us doing anything close to that. And not only was it horrible, but I think that one of the biggest problems in society as a whole right now is that people do not have the ability to acknowledge the difference in magnitude of different political things that are going on. I think that left-wing violence right now is very, very low on the totem pole of things we should care about politically. And I think that the biggest thing right now is Donald Trump's assault on our republic. I think that that is just hands down what should be at the top of every conversation. And I think that left-wing violence just isn't completely overblown and not something that we should be focusing, any time on. So
okay, well,
that's all.
Thank you for being here. We will get into it as we go. Appreciate you for coming on. Next up, someone else who hasn't been here in a while, Staxioms.
How's it going? Yeah, so I'd be happy to admit that left-wing political actors can have pretty extreme language, can engage in pretty extreme rhetoric. And I've been on this show being frustrated with left-wing political actors who support Houthis or Hamas and other terrorist organizations. But there are 2 lenses that I really need to stress. First off, this political violence is extremely non-institutional. It's not coming from it's not coming from the President of the United States or mainstream political figures. Largely, Democratic officials decry and disengage from all of these sort of violent tendencies. Secondly, this violence is largely non-harmful. People have already cited the Tesla bombings, which as far as I'm aware, haven't even injured anyone. They've largely just been vandalism, which I don't support, but nonetheless, that should be weighted. I'd love to talk about violence, and I'm committed to the fact that there are leftists who are on my side who have violent rhetoric. However, I will not hear about it from people who consider Ashley Babbitt a hero and the President of the United States rhetoric a non-issue.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Spicy. We'll get into it. Last but certainly not least, someone who hasn't, again, he's been on my show before, but it's been a while. The Big JC. Give us what you got.
Howdy. I'm the Big JC. I'm a neoliberal, which in some places means I'm too left for you, in some places means I'm a Nazi. So take that as you will. While the raw number of incidents of political violence almost certainly favor the right, I think we've seen lots of statistics to back that up, and conservatives broadly do little to nothing to contribute to the cessation of that violent rhetoric that kind of leads to that stochastic terrorism. There is still a lot of support that portions of the left grant to violent actors like the murderer Luigi Mangione or the terrorist organization Hamas that when we don't come out as a Democratic Party, is kind of the perspective I'm framing this through. If we don't come out and condemn this, it makes us all look fucking insane. Regardless of the number of incidences, the ones that we choose to focus on are so incontrovertibly horrible. But it's so much of the social media left, which I think we all acknowledge at this point plays a lot more of a factor into electoral politics than we previously gave it credit for. A lot of these social media actors will get behind these violent actors or violent groups to the detriment of Democrats as a whole and the left in America as a whole. And I think we need to be loud and vocal about denouncing these violent groups and actors and anybody who supports them.
Okay, well, the stage is set for yet another WIC discussion on a WIC panel. Let's get into it. Floor's open. If you have
Can
trouble
I,
getting in, raise your hand.
Sure.
whatever.
I could.
Can I have a question for you?
No,
Stax,
like that.
specifically?
Yeah, go
Well,
for
I guess
it.
this is a question for the panel that is related to something you said. Does anybody
No,
here
go
think
for it.
that Ashley Babbitt was a hero? I certainly don't. Does anybody here think Ashley Babbitt was a hero?
Okay, sorry for strawmanning you. That's fair
Oh,
enough.
sure. So, and I just want to point out, only 30% of Republicans support January 6th, as opposed to 84% of Democrats who support Black Lives Matter protests in 2020.
I think
Black
that's
Lives Matter protests.
well,
that's a pretty extreme false dichotomy
Yeah.
or
Well, hold on. That's
comparison.
not really.
You're right.
there
One
is
was
a
far
mo-
more expensive and involved literally taking over a section of the U.S. and declaring it
You would
separate from the
acknowledge that
rest of it.
there's like a more general
motivation
like,
is
movement part of
largely
BLM.
Well, hold on.
Motivation was
According to
based off of a lie, and it led to
Can we
violence.
concession from the conservatives that right-wing political violence in America far outweighs in number of incidences left-wing political violence in America?
Well, hold on. Before we get to
Well,
that,
hold
I
on.
want to
No,
say this.
no. Well,
hold on, because this goes back to
I don't
Lactoid
admit that,
originally.
but I'll
There's a
explain
new
what
poll.
you're
There's a
thinking
poll out from April 8th stating that 55% of Dems are Democratic people below a certain age group. I believe it's like in the 20s, and some is saying that they are willing and okay with political assassination as a tactic.
That's super
Like that,
awesome. It has nothing to do with what I just
cool.
asked
I know.
about.
That's
right?
what I said. That's why I said before you go there. Great. Anyway,
Are
so what
you
I'm
referring
saying
to like
is
terrorism specifically?
Yeah, so they're saying that
I'm saying if you look at
assassinations are
DHS
fantastic.
statistics,
Hold on.
right-wing-
One at a time. We gotta
Yeah.
let AdmiralGibbs finish his point, and then everyone can respond to him. Gibbs, finish your point, then I'm gonna let everyone else respond.
Real
Go
quick,
ahead.
so when we have like a segment of our youth, let's go to the I think it's 25 people, 25 and under are saying this, are saying that 55% of them that are left leaning are okay with political violence up to including assassination. That's fucking terrifying. It indicates kind of what Lactoid was speaking to with his statistic a few minutes ago, that this is a problem that's going to become more widespread as we go forward, as opposed to dying off.
Do you think that violence is just a general sentiment that was kind of brought into the spotlight because of events like January 6th?
No, BLM was
no.
before January 6th.
Yes,
I would
I'm
still
aware. I'm
really
just
like
saying
to
that, like,
concession on- yeah.
So no, the answer is no. I don't think that.
Oh, okay.
Could I throw
Okay,
this
I
in?
would-
I think that
hold on.
Yeah, well, Nonfon
for
then
it.
Staxioms.
That's fine.
Nonfon then
Yep.
Staxioms.
Sure. I would hope that we would acknowledge, like, if you ask a Democrat, like, if they support BLM or whatever, they're not thinking like specifically, do I support like the Chaz uprising? They're thinking like, do I support like the general movement, which I believe has good goals and which the majority protests for which were peaceful, even if they probably do condemn the actual rioting.
So this data comes from following the BLM riots that occurred throughout the quote unquote summer of love, and that it's probably the case that the people who approve overall of the protests and the movement, maybe not all of them are going to say, well, I particularly supported the violence. Just like I would say the 30% of Republicans that supported January 6th, most of them see it like, look at the majority of nonviolent people who are standing outside the Capitol. Maybe they support that. Maybe they'll say, I don't necessarily support the actual breaking of certain things, etc. Getting that level of nuance, I agree, would be difficult. But I just want to point out that in both scenarios, you have an incident, I guess, that had a tremendous amount of violence intertwined with it on both occasions. And you have the overwhelming amount of Democrats willing to overlook that at the very least and support the overall thing, when you don't see that among most Republicans. You see that among a minority of Republicans.
I think the main issue with that is that there is no good component of January 6th. There wasn't like a number of righteous people who are willing to invade the Capitol and trying to hang Mike Pence. Sure, there might have been more innocent actors, but they still nonetheless were breaking and entering into a public official or into a political gathering intending to overrun an election. Now, Black Lives Matter, you might get frustrated with, you might disagree with the reason why we're moving forward. You might disagree with abolishing the police, as do I, but I still engaged in Black Lives Matter because I still felt like there was still a huge positive element to it. And the every single event that I attended was extremely peaceful, and police were not needed to be called. So if I would be asked, do I support Black Lives Matter? I would say absolutely. But I think that it's fair to say, like, I don't know how you could support January 6th in any positive light.
Okay, this is complete.
Sure,
This is complete,
you
this is
absolutely
no,
could
hold on. This is a complete false dichotomy to begin with, because all of the rioters, or the majority of them, that damaged property, that were apprehended, face justice for the crimes they committed. Donald Trump will never, ever see the inside of a courtroom for trying to coup the United States government. So even
Or any of the
comparing this,
participants.
again, like, this is why, like, I'm okay with framing this as a party critique. Like, hey, lefties, we gotta, like, make sure we're shooing the violence out of our party. But conservatives have absolutely no room to stand when it comes to violent rhetoric and violent action in America. Absolutely none.
Most Republicans reject January 6th. Most Democrats do not reject.
What does that
the
mean?
BLM.
What do you mean
Also,
most Republicans reject
Only
January 6th?
70% disapprove of January 6th. Only 30%
What about
approve of it.
what about
Wait,
pardoning?
disapprove of?
What about
how many
pardoning?
Republicans following January 6th thought the election had been stolen?
Well, hold on.
A lot of them.
if
I don't know.
there
What
was
does that do to the
evidence to
violence?
support that, I mean, do you think
I
that they
don't
would have a right? Hold on. Let's just examine that. If you truly believe the election was stolen, right, based off the information that presented to you. Now, I know not all information is equal, but if you truly believe the election had been stolen, do you think that in that case, violence would have been justified?
So you just justified an insurrection, Gibbs. Good job. Thank you very
Wait,
much
wait,
for
wait,
saying
wait,
that. Yes,
wait,
it was
wait.
the-
Majority of violence that you're referring to, specifically things like Kyle Rittenhouse, are also operating off of ignorance and not necessarily an impulse for violence. Like, for example, the average Democrat will hear what happened with Rittenhouse and they just went, oh, well, someone shot 3 people at a Black Lives Matter movement, and then he got completely let off. And that's just another indication of Rittenhouse being set free. Now, obviously, he was acting in self-defense, but that is operating outside of ignorance. That's not an endorsement of violence. Does that make sense?
No. Then they're ignorantly supporting violence.
No,
You can ignorantly support violence, right? When they attack Kyle Rittenhouse, right? Like, whether or not you oppose or you support, like, him getting in trouble, if you do it because, let's say, you're just actually like, yeah, you know, we want the BLM rioters to attack and to burn stuff. We like that. We want them to be able to attack people and get away with it. You know, and you have another person who just has no idea and here we are years later, has done no effort whatsoever to educate themselves about the situation, but still holds their position. Both of them are equally dangerous in the voting booth.
Can I ask?
Well,
I'm back.
The biggest thing we're missing.
Hold on. Potts, go ahead, and then I have a question for Lactoid.
Okay, the biggest difference between BLM and January 6th, that, like, no matter what about the facts, is that the president of the United States was the one who organized that event and led those people there. So it like, BLM was just a group. It was a bunch of separate organizations under one movement in different states over a long period of time, multiple protests. January 6th was an organized event by the president. The leader of the Republican Party organized them to go there, and with the intention of intimidating Mike Pence into violating the Electoral Count Act. That's what happened. There's a massive difference. They aren't comparable at all.
I have a question for the panel, because I might not remember my history. Did Joe Biden pardon any Black Lives Matter violent activists? No, that was just Donald Trump. That was just Donald Trump for January 6th. Right. Okay. Gotcha. I don't understand how we can talk about endorsement of violence without referring to Donald Trump pardoning cop beaters. I don't understand that. That feels
like
like
conservatives have no room
hold on.
to criticize the left in this area, because they can't even control themselves when it comes to political violence, let alone criticize other parties.
Widespread pardoning is insane. It's insane, and the fact that the president of the United States signed off on that.
Hold on.
First of all,
that nullifies everything else.
Gibbs, go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, this is ludicrous. The reason I asked Saxon that question earlier is because, I think it's a pretty reasonable and cold take that if you truly believe that the election had been stolen, violence is reasonable. I don't think that's a stretch for anybody here to imagine, right? The reason I said that is then it comes back to what Lactoid's point was, which is 70% of Republicans disapprove of January 6th. That indicates that within the Republican Party, 70% of people said, hey, We don't think this was stolen. This is a fringe outlying group. That's bad. However, when I go and look, and I have the poll, and I posted it in the chat, it's saying 55% of Dems are okay with the murder of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. I think there's a slight difference between the two, but
do you think that has
55%
anything to do with the actions that those two individuals have taken as investments of institutional power?
Hold on. Yeah,
you think there's a little bit of a difference there?
Let me finish. Yeah, I think there's a massive difference. I think there's a massive difference when the Republicans overall, as a whole, disown January 6th. And y'all just keep holding on to this, while 55% are willing to say, hey, we should have more Luigis.
You know who doesn't disown January 6th? Donald Trump.
As well as all the people who voted for him.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
like, absolutely not. Like, this
of disincentivization. It's not enough of a disincentive because he still voted for them. They still voted for him.
Bro, how are you going to talk about pardons when we literally have the auto pen scandal going on? We don't even know who.
Oh my God! Do not bring up. You mean the Gibbs scandal? The last time you were on here, chill out, bro.
I'm only bringing this up because you brought up pardons. This guy gave out preemptive pardons to stop investigations. I don't want to hear about pardons, bro.
That proves
like
the reason we're bringing up the pardons is like endorsement of violence. He's saying it's okay that my supporters.
It is an endorsement of violence. You're endorsing organized crime. That's violence.
Who did Hunter Biden murder? I'm trying to figure that one out. I'm trying to figure out who he attacked, who he assaulted. Now, we can be frustrated with the pardoning of
lead to dying. We don't know.
James Comey was signaling to Hunter Biden.
I mean, I don't know. Drug purchases, sex trafficking never lead to anybody's murder
Biden
everywhere.
Activated. I got my orders, Mr.
Agent
Comey.
B, we need you.
Well, I do have a question though, for Gibbs and for Lactoid side, if you will, in this, right? And because you mentioned the statistic, and I'll just grant you that it's true that of the 55% of young Democrats who post
that seems reasonable.
It seems a reasonable thing, and I think it is condemnable. Do you acknowledge though that most of the right, most Republicans of all age groups, support Trump's violent deportations of people for their freedom of speech?
For their freedom of speech.
Yep, for their freedom of speech, for
I don't
making
know if I'd call
op-eds about
I can agree with that framing.
Wait, Lactoid, finish it. Say it. You don't know you consider it what?
The framing.
I don't know if I consider this to be like political violence, like enforcing.
Oh my
the law.
God! Yes,
So
yes. So it's not political violence to be removed from the country that you're currently living in.
So here,
hold on.
Arguably, let me explain. Arguably, I don't support the deportation of Mahmoud Khalil, by the way, but arguably, right. Would you consider? I mean, it could be considered violence to like arrest murderers too, right? Technically, any kind of state action, I suppose, you could argue is violence by the state. But if it's enforcing a genuine like set of laws, which it looks like he very well may have legal authority to do what he's doing when it comes to Mahmoud Khalil, even though I don't support it, I'm not sure.
Why don't you support it? Out of curiosity.
Well, I don't support it because like I'm a really big.
But I understand you don't. Lactoid. Hold on, just real quick. I understand you don't, Lactoid. Stop. I understand you don't, Lactoid, but you acknowledge that most Republicans do?
Sure, but from my opposition to it has to do...
Khalil, but
Oster, my opposition...
and the dozens.
All the people you're going to mention, My opposition to it has to do with my strong affinity towards freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And there's plenty of criticism here, honestly. And I've been pretty vocal on Twitter criticizing Trump about these actions based on like a First Amendment kind of, not First Amendment, but freedom of speech kind of background. But I'm talking about Republicans.
I
understand I do as well, but I don't think that like supporting this is necessarily being in favor of like political violence in the kind that we're talking about. Like, I think that when BLM like, is attacking innocent people, when people are dying, when the most expensive rights in history are happening, when places are getting burned down, when they're occupying certain areas, and all this being brazenly illegal, and you have Democrat politicians, right? Multiple of them, including Kamala Harris, who are making statements that really aren't all that critical and actually do appear to be demonstrate some kind of implicit support for the protest. I think that this is political violence in the sense that we're having this discussion about. Not
Lactoid, do you think it's political violence?
Somebody got elected and then decided to like enforce
someone
the
for
laws.
something they say yes or no.
Well, hold on. I also want to get in on this.
I think it's political violence.
There's a lot of people, and I'm much more in the pro like deport a lot of people camp right now. And it's not because of the free speech. Yeah, as long as it's legal it's not for the free speech aspect. Mainly for me, it's because the crime. We have illegal immigration. I don't care about it. However, I do want to say I think there is a large segment of Republicans, and I am somewhat sympathetic to this view. It's not my view per se, but I at least understand where they come from. Whenever I have an example from out of the United States, I'll use what pro Hamas Imam Zafir Khan, or I think I'm probably butchered his name. I apologize for that. He just got kicked out of Italy after living there for 30 years because he, quote, called for active jihad in Italy. Now, they said, okay, this guy's been a legal resident for 30 years, and now he said something that's saying we should have active violence in the streets here in Italy, potentially. And we kicked him out. Now, whenever I hear that, I say, hey, that's based. If you don't want to be here and you want to cause violence, we don't want you here. You're at our pleasure. You can say what you want, but you know what? If you want to keep saying these things, guess what? Go home. I get that argument. And I think there's something to be said for that argument when people are here saying anti-American things, calling for potential violence here in America, and then Trump goes, hey, cool, your visa's revoked, get the fuck out.
Sorry, there is nothing more American than being anti-American.
Sure, okay,
I have a quick question. Is depriving someone of their Second Amendment rights like political violence or a form of political violence? Do we all agree with that pretty much?
Not necessarily.
Depriving visas, is that what you said?
Okay.
Like for example, would you
No,
like for if
Second
the
Amendment
law that
Any
prevents
position to win an argument,
can I explain? Like if the government currently has a law, let's say, that says if you're a felon you can't own a gun, would you call this violence in the context of what we're talking about?
Call that a form
in
of
this
political
discussion?
violence. Yeah, I would
Really?
actually call that a form of political violence. Yeah, I would.
Okay,
You know
Okay,
what
yeah,
I
you're
would
right.
say?
Enforcement of
I
all
would
laws
say
then
by
is technically
committing
political violence.
by committing a felony in the United
you just
States of
discovered
America,
taxes are
by
violent.
committing a felony in the United States of America, you have warranted a level of political violence upon yourself by infringing on the laws of society and the country.
Do you pay
So, yeah,
taxes,
I would
Jason?
call it political violence.
So now all we have to do now is to find out like which party enforces more laws, and then that's the party that's more politically violent. There you go.
Well, look, I think the state is
Okay,
obviously
yeah, that's
meant to have
absolutely
like
what I meant.
monopoly.
Lactoid, 100%.
That's the rational implication of what you said. You
That's
said
not the
enforcing the
implication.
law.
That's the
You said
natural
enforcing the law is
implication.
political violence, and therefore,
100%.
any like
It's a
the more
straw man.
enforcement, it's not a straw man at all. He
And
just
he
said
bitched about being
he
straw
said
man
stop
out the
the
gate.
felons.
Isn't
I
that
think
that
pathetic?
is what he just
He
said.
said stop.
Hold on. He's not saying
Hold on.
any law. He's saying this specific law.
Okay, can you name me enforcing a law that wouldn't require violence? How do you
No.
enforce a law without any kind of violence?
Hold on, maybe I can help.
Violence.
Maybe I can help.
Of course,
Maybe I
it would
can help.
require
And I'm gonna
violence.
try to
How
help.
else do you enforce
What I
a law?
understand to be being
Understand what you're
implied
saying.
here.
You understand what I'm saying.
So if
No,
the
it doesn't make
government
any sense,
came
that's
to
why.
your house, Lactoid,
Nice.
right? The government came to your house. They didn't imply you were breaking a law or anything like that, right? They didn't give you notice. They didn't serve a warrant. They didn't do anything. But they came to your house and they shot you, right? For no reason, right? You didn't break any laws. You would consider that violence? Yes?
It's violence in the sense of like enforcing the law. In this case, if it's be extra legal, then I guess you could potentially put it in the category that we're talking about in this panel. But I wouldn't say that enforcing a law is like violence in the way that we're talking about it on this panel.
That's
It's not like political violence.
I agree with that,
Lactoid-
Lactoid.
I
But what's
think
crazy
Lactoid
is
is
they've all become
reasonable
libertarians
there.
just
Can we
now.
define
They
political
all just-
violence then?
Thank you.
I
understand.
Okay,
Define political violence.
Well, Lactoid, they just discovered
I think it's
libertarianism.
reasonable
They're
to
over
say
here
that
like
the
saying,
state
hey,
is meant to
hold
any
on.
laws is violence. If you
Look.
pay taxes, that's violence now. I mean,
Taxes
if that's
are
what you're
violence.
comparing-
True.
if they're
I'm saying
comparing
they're
terrorism
stealing
against
my money at gunpoint.
libertarians,
All
they're
taxes.
not
I agree.
conservative
I agree with the
party.
definition.
Please
I agree with the
understand
definition.
what
Your
they've been
definition is
saying,
right.
guys.
All taxes
You
are
fucking
theft.
idiots.
All theft
All
is
right.
violence.
We're
It's
gonna
all
conservative
violence.
party.
Democrats
So
are by
when Trump
far
implements the
most
largest
violent.
tax, hold on.
Okay,
When Trump
figure it out.
implements the
I
largest tax
think-
increase in history with the
Wow.
tariffs, that would be the violence. Yes.
Oh,
Well, hold on. That
Alright,
would be violence. You're right, but
Yes, I-
overall, who
Violence.
taxes more? Democrats do. They are overall
Not
more
with
violent.
tariffs.
There you go.
But let's give it
Hey,
to
yeah, I
let's give
think
it
it's
to
right.
Tariffs
Okay.
are violence. Let's talk about the
Let's give it to
tariffs.
Nonfon.
But
I-
just to
what are you
re-
saying?
Sure, I think
Just
it's.
for the
I
purpose
think
of this debate, I
Lactoid's
think-
reasonable in saying like the state is meant to have a monopoly on violence, and it's so insofar as the state is like enforcing its own laws, even if those laws are unjustified, it's probably not really political violence. But I will say, it seems like you could run the same type of defense Gibbs ran, where you say like if the state is doing something you think is unjustified, like illegal, deportations, whether they're legal or not, if you severely disagree with them, or if they're severely immoral. Could you argue people are justified in types of violence to resist that?
You could.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the left often does.
Yeah.
Can we
Yeah, that's
can we
why
stop
it's
being? I feel like we're being morons on this. Okay, there's two sides of stupidity on this. Okay, the first is all laws are violence because the state needs to enact some sort of violence in order to maintain it. Okay, that is stupid. Okay, that's a libertarian, stupid ass leftist position. Okay, then you've got the other side, which is like essentially everything. Nothing that is legal is violence, which would also seem to be your position. Okay, can we have a little bit of a middle ground and
Where's
say
the distinction? Give me the distinction. Give me a logical distinction between the two.
between
Two
okay,
things you
sure.
just said.
Political
Sure,
violence.
fine. We'll say-
Where is the line and why?
Fine.
Go ahead.
Fine, I understand. We'll say one is from the left. It's a left-wing perspective of the same thing, and one is the right-wing perspective of the same thing. Okay, can we turn on our brain cells a little bit and say, obviously, that the state can enact some sort of violence onto its people, even if it's quote unquote legal?
Where's the line? Why isn't taxation violent?
No, I don't have to demonstrate a line. I can just say, hey,
You can just
this
say
is
it?
clearly illegal and this is clearly legal. No. That's such
I think
that's
taxes
a
are
logical
violent,
fallacy. I can point
Well, this
to
is not a
two
logical
clear
fallacy.
examples of two different examples without
Why are
stipulating a
taxes
line
not- no,
between
no.
them.
Why are taxes not violence? Give me the underlying principle that would make taxes not violence, but would make the thing that you're talking about.
I don't need to enforce one. That's not how definitions work. They're
Wait, hold on.
essentially
If I don't,
No. I'm asking
Hold
for
on,
a
hold on.
principle
They're
that you're
vi-
using. How are you I'm not asking you necessarily for a line now because you said you don't want to
if I
provide that.
don't pay taxes,
What are you,
happens?
Gibbs? 1 second. What are you do? What method are you using? What principle are you using to distinguish between a state action that is violence and a state action that is not violence? What's your principle?
I don't know if I have a clear one. But I don't know.
You think it's a vibe?
I
It's a
do
vibe.
not
You just
need
look
one.
at it.
Sorry.
I'm gonna
Welcome to
say that
language. It's a little bit of a
deporting people-
nebulous thing.
No, this
I'm
isn't
gonna say,
language. It's
wait,
not
hold on,
nebulous
hold on.
at all.
I got
Nebulous
I'm
thing.
defining
I'm gonna
violence.
say that
I can define it
deporting-
nebulously.
I'm saying
Give
I'll
JC
I can
JC
nail
a
it down.
chance. JC, do you have
I
any
can
answers
nail
to
it down.
Lactoid?
Violence
I'm gonna
is when
say that
bad thing
deporting-
that I don't like
Oh
happens.
my god, he
That's
loves
not what
you.
I said at all.
That's
Man,
exactly what I said.
nobody loved the sound of their own voice more than me. Holy shit. I'm going to say that deporting people based on just things they say that are critical of the current administration or its direction is a lot closer to the BLM type violence y'all are bitching about than taxation. Does that ground it out a little bit more?
I think
for ya?
taxation is looting. They're looting me. That's what they're doing. Every
Okay, well,
paycheck.
They're robbing
Classic
apples and
looting.
directly from
When they're
you.
robbing you
looting
and then
my
give you a
paycheck.
whole bunch of
Nobody
shit back.
cares. A
don't
lot
give
of us
me nearly as
graduated
much
that
shit back as
ideology
they
in
take.
high school. Okay, a lot of us are adults now, so nobody cares that you think
Nice.
that it's so mean of the government to take your money. Okay, get over it and
They're
come back
looting
to the
it. They're
debate
not
with
just
us,
taking.
okay?
They're looting it.
No,
They're
hold on,
looting
hold
my
on,
money.
hold on,
It's
hold on,
violent.
hold on. That's
They're
ridiculous.
sending
That's ridiculous.
armed
First of all,
thugs with guns to take my money. Okay,
No,
this
no,
is what
we
happens.
just were
And
ta- we were just-
if I don't do it,
Hold
they
on.
put me in a cage. They put me in a cage. People with guns. This is horrible
Well,
violence. How is this not violence?
Look, if you want to,
to
like,
me-
but if you want to have like the NAP taxation and stuff debate, I'm sure Gibbs can set that up.
I am just making a point. No, not fun. Not
I
fun.
just want to be clear.
I'm
I
making a
tried to like bring
I'm
it back
making a
to the
point.
actual core of the debate.
No.
and
Let
Lactoid's
me
the one
explain.
who's
No,
still failing
you're not.
about
No, you're
paying
not.
taxes.
No. The only one of you that actually gets it is Nonfon. Okay. I'm making a point. The point that I'm making is that you guys have no discerning principle between what is going to be state violence during this
That's
conversation
exactly.
and what isn't going to be state
Andrew
violence.
Wilson,
You're
we don't
literally-
have to
you're
have that for
literally-
this
you're
purposes of
literally-
this
you're
conversation.
literally-
Especially, I don't have to
you
ground it out
sentence?
to a conservative.
Let me finish
okay?
it. Let me finish
Once
this
he
sentence.
finishes,
Okay?
I'll get it. I'll get us back on
somebody
track.
else can jump in. So the reason why I'm making this point is, like, you guys have no principle that you're using to discern between the two. You're literally saying, "Oh, look at this. This clearly looks like violence to me. Therefore, this is a kind of state violence that I want to talk about in this conversation about political violence."
Okay, what's your discerning principle?
My initial point is
He's
that
a conservative.
all
They
of
don't
the-
have any.
My
MAGA doesn't have
initial
any.
my initial point is that all of this
That's
is state
funny.
violence. I would say deportations are state violence. I would say taxation is state violence. I would say all this.
Wait,
all
now
this
you're
is state
saying
violence.
deportations
Now, wait,
are
hold
I
on.
would
state
say,
violence?
I would say,
You
I
were
would say, I
just
would say, I would say, I would say,
No, that's
all
not
of
what
I would
Such a
say,
lying fuck.
I would
Holy
say,
shit.
I would say.
Or
None
you
of you
just
get
get
it. Besides
flexible, you
Nonfon,
think he's-
all
oh
of
my
you are like
God.
your
You can't
IQs
even keep it
dropping.
consistent through one debate.
Your IQs
You're
dropping.
even going for an
Roll back
hour.
the stream and you'll see the point that I'm making. Okay, weird how
I just-
Nonfon
hold
gets
on.
it. Weird how Nonfon gets it, but none of you seem to.
Can I
It's
just
fucking
ask-
wild.
Okay, enough. Enough.
I wasn't able to finish my sentence yet. Please, without these fucking animals
Quickly,
jumping on
let
me.
your
Okay,
plane, Amelia.
I'm trying to make it quick. So, all of these things are state violence. When we're here talking about political violence, I assumed that we were having a conversation outside of the state monopoly on violence. I would assume that we're talking about outside of the state enforcing the laws. If we want to include
That would be
the
convenient
state-
for you.
if we-
It
no, it would
should.
actually be
Wouldn't it?
inconvenient for you. Because what that would mean then is I'm going to bring up taxation, because taxation is state violence. So I'm assuming if we want to have a conversation about political violence, you should probably leave the state violence, which is overwhelmingly committed, like in all sorts of ways that you guys don't think is violence, because you guys have no discerning principle between taxation and
Yeah,
I have a
right,
question,
You're on
Lactoid.
4K, like going
I
back
have a
and something you
question,
said
Lactoid.
in this debate in less than like 45 minutes. Okay.
Do you
It's
feel like-
frustrating, I know.
Do you feel like Donald Trump, first off, exercised his constitutional right to pardon whoever he would choose, whoever he would like to? He pardoned violent citizens, okay? And in some ways, tacitly endorsed violence being done onto the citizens because they can
Well-
retroactively be pardoned by the state. Do you
Well,
feel like that
Staxioms.
might be dangerous?
Well,
I don't
Staxioms,
Even though he's following the law.
Hold on.
He's following the law.
No, hold on. He didn't promise to
hold on,
pardon
this
to
one.
encourage violence.
Sorry?
hold on,
What does pardoning them do? Pardoning
It
them
doesn't-
Do you think he
hold on, hold on.
tacitly
He didn't.
So
No.
let me ask you
He
this.
pardoned after the fact.
No, I
Did
understand,
you
but do you
just
think he
say-
tacitly endorses violence because he's showing that if you enact violence, but do it through his wants
his
and
name.
needs, in his name, that he'll endorse them?
Okay,
Or he'll
I want
pardon
you to
them.
think. Hold on, Staxioms.
Do you think that's a concern, even though it's all legal?
Hold on. Before we get there, because this is important. This is what you and JC just did. And this is the question you just asked, right?
Okay.
So what Lactoid has been trying to say is Republicans have a standard, and the reason why y'all shouldn't want to bring state violence in is because to meet that standard, he's going to be much more consistent than y'all. And to make that a true statement,
I get all that.
Hold on. You and JC both said, the violence is defined nebulously. Basically, it's defined on how I interpret violence. Okay, cool.
No, that's not.
Yes, that is. That is what you said.
How do you define a chair?
Same thing. Yep, that's basically the same thing.
Verbatim what you said. Now, the reason why we were saying Nonfon understands. That's why you're saying that. It's because Nonfon understands the consistency we have going through. If you're going to say violence can be defined nebulously, then in this case, if Trump foresees this, hey, these guys were not acting violently because I defined it nebulously in Donald Trump's name, then guess what? These guys weren't violent at all because
not
guess what? It
violence.
meets my criteria.
Okay,
Wait, hold on.
Can I take over? I'd love to take over. They challenged me. I'd like to refute
Staxios,
this.
go ahead.
I'd like to
Staxios,
refute this.
refute
Let me just
that.
finish, and that's fine. That's fine. Let me finish though, and that's why Lactoid and what I'm saying is much more consistent because I could go, okay, if we're talking about state violence, taxation theft, because if I don't pay taxes, they violently apprehend me and like force me to pay, or they garnish my wages, or they put me in jail,
can
and
I
I'm
just
forced
get
to do
some
this.
clarity?
Or if there's,
I'd like to go. I'd like to go.
understand, but I want clarity from you and the audience.
This is why it's the consistency check
question.
versus you said,
Yeah.
we define it
everyone-
nebulously however we see fit.
Okay,
Cool.
So Donald Trump's not
hold on.
committed
Everyone
because he sees
shut
it
up because
as
I
negative.
just need a
Brother
clarifying
Gibbs.
question that you actually said
Gotcha.
what I thought you said, and I heard it correctly. If I heard it incorrectly, then we're going to have a different conversation. But if I heard it correctly, I'm going to give it to Staxioms, and Staxioms can go, right? Did you just say that if Donald Trump says that they weren't being violent, then they weren't being violent?
True.
Is that what you said?
Republicans can't
Yeah,
do
that-
violence
that
because
would
violence
be-
is defined when
yeah.
Democrats do it.
There you
And,
go.
and we just define a chair a certain
Staxioms,
way,
go
so why
ahead.
can't we
I
define
hope you have
violence
an
that
answer
way?
for that.
Okay, I would like to open this up for cross-examination. Lactoid or Gibbs, either of you guys, who would like to approach the bench?
Give Gibbs.
That's not how this works. I forget how. I'm not a lawyer. Gibbs, can I interrogate you? I have a question.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay,
ask-
great.
ask me.
How would you define violence? Because wait, hold on. Before you go, here's my claim. You also define it nebulously. That's how fucking language and definitions work. But go ahead. How do you define violence?
Gibbs, let me answer.
Sure. Lactoid, you can go for it. Go for it.
Here's how I define violence.
Mhm.
Violence is when Democrats use force against
Nice.
people.
Okay, cool. So just fucking memes. Okay, got it.
I can define it however I want. We can define it however we want, can't we? A chair.
How
What's
are you
a chair? What's a chair,
Hey.
Staxioms? You can't define it, right?
Okay, hold on.
What's
We
the
can
violence
define
definition?
things.
If you want to engage the game, we can do the game. No, let's do the game.
Hold on,
This is
hold
the
on,
game.
hold on,
This
hold
is the
on,
game you want to
hold on.
play.
No.
Hold on,
Let's do
hold
the
on.
game. Let's do the actual game.
Stop.
To play. I'm ready.
Stop.
I got this.
Stop.
Let's go.
Stop. You guys are so stupid about language. Okay, we can all agree.
I'm gonna be
This
in
is a
face if you let me
chair.
answer.
We can all agree I'm sitting in a chair.
We don't need to do
even
that.
though-
We don't need to do that. Staxioms, so we don't have to do that. Look, okay, I'll engage. You want me to
Yeah,
define
but I can
violence?
give you the principle of what a chair is.
Sure.
I would love to hear it. I'd love to hear how you can from like
Violence is any time one person physically asserts their will against that other person's will. It makes them do something.
wait, hold on. Violently asserts their will over another person's will. So taxation is theft, correct? Or taxation is violence, right?
That'd be one form of violence, yeah.
Okay, cool. And when a parent says, "Hey, kid, knock it off, or you're grounded," that's also violence, right? You're enacting
That would
violence on a child.
That makes sense.
When you go
Okay.
to the dentist,
That
and you
is-
get a cavity filled. Is that violence as well?
It would be violence against the.
Oh my
cavity,
god.
Okay, so
That's
like,
wild.
Speeding
so like, what the hell are we
Come
talking
on.
about? Because
That's
here's
so
the thing.
dumb,
Here's
yeah.
your problem with your definition.
Anything to
The
escape
moment that you
accountability for the
walk
insurrection,
outside,
right?
the
Anything
moment
to
you
do
walk
that.
outside and fucking touch grass, the moment your definition of violence blows up, no one says, "Hey,
It's a
excuse
spectrum,
me,
not a
CPS."
binary.
It's a spectrum.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a
I'm saying it's a
spectrum,
spectrum.
not a binary.
I'm saying it's a spectrum. That's my whole argument. that it's nebulous.
That's not your argument at all.
Because how is it not my argument?
I'll explain.
That's not my argument. You asked for a line. I don't need a line. That's what a spectrum is.
No. Actually, you put lines on spectrums all the time.
We have a simple line. It's very easy.
You put lines.
Those are arbitrary. Those are arbitrary lines on a spectrum.
Here we go. Everyone shut up. Everyone shut up. This is this farce, this circus.
Let Nonfon talk.
I've let it gone on long enough because it was kind of funny, right? But I do want to
Define
have some
funny,
sort
Wick.
of productive.
This funny a spectrum, Wick.
All of you shut up, or we'll enact violence
What a
upon
stupid
you.
fucking
Okay.
question. I'm sorry.
I want to get us back
Yeah, I
to
agree.
the
It
matter
was a stupid
at
question.
hand. The core of the debate tonight, the core of the question tonight, is left-wing violence being overblown by the right wing, or is it, as many on the right would say, a serious and growing threat that most of, if not all, of the left engages in? I want to give it to Nonfon. Give it to Nonfon, who's been very good and the least clowny of all of you. To start us off.
It's true, though.
I mean, I was attempting to bring it back. I was just going to say, like, I think you can have a consistent definition of violence that includes both, like, state violence and, like, non-state actors or whatever. I just think that, I mean, the obvious position would be, like, it's net utility maximizing to allow the state to enforce violence in certain areas, so long as those decisions are made democratically or whatever. But yeah, like, obviously, I think we're meant to be talking about political violence outside the state's monopoly on violence.
Outside of the state, right? That's what we're talking about.
Wait, but
they want to talk about violence within the state.
I agree.
My question serves, which is the president used all of the state's monopoly on violence to pardon violent citizens. Do you feel like that might tacitly endorse violence that happens outside of the system? So that's what I'm trying to say. It's a little bit of a vague position. And I'm asking, why wouldn't Donald Trump be in some cases endorsing violence? Okay, go ahead.
Would you say it's equivalent to bonding people out of jail that were in riots?
Sorry?
Would you say that's equal or equivalent to bonding people that acted out in riots out of jail?
Bonding? No, because they're not pardoned.
It is.
There's still
spectrum.
No. It is equal. Hold on. I'll explain.
Those are equal.
Yeah. Well, in the principle that we're trying to appeal.
Hold on, you guys are talking over each other. Lactoid, go ahead. Answer the question.
Yeah. In the principle you're trying to appeal to here. So I think deportations are a bad example because it's exclusively state violence. When we're talking about pardoning people who are doing extra legal violence or bailing people out who are doing extra legal violence, in both of those situations, you're using a legal mechanism to tacitly support an illegal action. So I'm open to that being different. I'm open to that being sort of a tacit endorsement of illegal kind of political violence, the kind that we're here in this panel to talk about, as opposed to like deportations. And so if you want to talk about like the pardons from Trump, that's a fair thing to bring up. I also think it's fair for Gibbs to bring up the bailing out of violent rioters out of jail. I think that's also relevant to bring up. Yeah.
Does someone getting out on bail say anything about whether or not the thing that they did is bad or good? Does that have any is posting bail?
If you bail somebody out, yeah.
We'll say this when we have prominent Democratic congresspeople like Maxine Waters saying no peace, like burn it down, all sorts of crazy shit. And then we have behind the scenes, they're actively bailing people out that committing the riots. That's not only an endorsement, it's like saying it's okay. It's an endorsement of these acts because they're saying, oh, you committed this violent act. Now we're bailing you out. We're fighting for you. And we told you to do it. Like, it's crazy that you're going to sit here and argue.
Did any political actor bail people out?
Yeah, there was a bail fund.
Does a lawyer
bail fund?
Hold on, $5. $5. You will not interrupt my money. All of you will shut the fuck up for my money. Okay, $5 from Audacity. To say pardons are not a decree of guilt or endorsement from the executive office. They're operations of mercy. We'll get into that. But the question is, if a lawyer defends a client, is that an endorsement of that client's actions?
No, but that's different than a pardon or bailing somebody out.
I don't think
I would
it's
say
different from bailing. I have bailed out my uncle who I know did it. I don't approve of what he did, but I still bailed him out.
Well, hold on. Yes, and Biden bailed out his son. But we're looking at the motivation. This is different. If you have a bail fund, if you have a bail, I know, that's what I said. If you have a bail fund that is specifically bailing out, if you have a bail, I said it's different.
Just go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. If you have a bail fund that is specifically targeting like for political reasons people to bail out, or you're specifically pardoning people who like aren't your family for political reasons, I think you can make a very strong argument that this is a political endorsement of violence to some extent. Absolutely.
There's a massive difference between posting bail and pardoning someone, and that is when you post someone's bail, they still have to face trial.
Yeah, this is a
Do they not?
ridiculous.
Hold on. If I told you, if I told you,
again,
hey, if you go commit this crime, I'll bail you out. This is an endorsement. 100%.
But there are degrees to this.
You still have to go to trial,
there are.
right?
Sure, there are
You still have to get charged with the crime.
But a pardon is.
I think Gibbs is fine to bring this up. Is what I said. That was my initial point.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'm saying the reason why it
also-
isn't analogous
Well,
is
to
because of the
substantiate
difference
that.
between bail and pardons.
Well, I would
I
say,
think-
yeah,
well,
the
no,
parties,
it's
the
analogous
parties
in the
not
principle.
acknowledge-
It is a legal mechanism to endorse a extra legal action.
Well,
in this case, violence.
I think it's much worse. I think there's two other aspects we're not factoring here. One, we have active Congress people calling for the violence, like arguably calling for it, right? Then we have the bail fund that's sponsored by them. So it seems like it's an endorsement of the violence. Finally, we just had the other day them basically assault an ICE facility. It was a mayor and a congressperson assaulted,
true.
and the mayor got arrested. Now, what this is telling me is that sitting official party members are actively engaging in the violence and now are advocating to do this further. This is a problem. Our sitting party members are advocating for the violence. And then we have 55% of people under a certain age are saying, hey, let's assassinate the leader of our country. Yeah, I got to say, it's fundamentally and structurally and function. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking for a word. Doesn't matter. It's within all the Democratic Party, and it's just terrible to see. Like this, you can't even deny it.
I think that I just want to point out real quick that Lactoid was all ass-pained about inconsistent definitions and nebulous definitions, and then he broke apart the definition of and contorted the definition of like endorsement to the point that he could wrap it around whatever argument he needed to. So like, either you need a consistent definition or you don't. Like, or
I applied it to both something Trump did.
Nebulous,
No, hold on. This is ridiculous, and I don't even know if anybody else on the panel would agree with that. Even people on your side.
Okay.
I applied this to pardons that Trump did, and I applied it to the.
You said it was a legal mechanism tied to a criminal action. That's what you called it.
It's a legal mechanism that you're using because Staxioms is talking about how pardons are legal, and they are, right? The president has wide authority and discretion to use pardons. But if you're using something that you have a legal right to do to like for political, like to target people who've done political violence, to like get them away from some responsibility for their actions, like in one case a pardon, in the other case a bail, right, getting them out of prison or out of jail. Like this is absolutely it's like the same principle on both ways.
Wait. So you do agree then that Donald Trump endorsed the violence of the January 6th rioters
to some extent,
to stop the vote? No,
not to some extent. Multiple times.
Because you would not give the same nuance to a Democrat. I'm asking.
I did. I said to some extent for both. I'm giving the exact same definition for both. To some extent for both.
Yes or no?
Bail fund and for both the pardon. To some extent.
Not to some extent. Like we need to start grounding.
How about I answer the way I want?
I don't like how how ass-pain you are about nebulousness.
I don't know how ass-pain you are about the way I answer.
Well, JC, do you think that like physically assaulting a guard outside an ICE facility as a sitting mayor is more violent than saying words at a speech?
Who's saying the words and who's saying them too? And is there a likelihood that those words could incite a violent riot?
Well, considering a riot did start after the mayor, was fighting these, guards. I think that they're equivalent, if not worse.
Started because he was fighting the guards.
One of them is saying, "Hey, let's fight them at the ballot box." The other guy's over here saying, "Hey, let's fight the guards," and I'm actively going to lead the riot. You tell me which is a worse thing for a sitting party.
You know what, Gibbs? Wait, real quick, Gibbs. I will tell you that when you find the citation from Trump's lip speech where he said, "We're going to fight them at the ballot box and we're going to fight them in the election."
What do you mean it's fighting at the ballot box? It was 2 months after.
Peaceful. He said peaceful and patriotic.
Peaceful.
Oh my God! Yeah, he said that one fucking time.
I want to give it to Nonfon.
Peaceful violence now. Are we defining peaceful as violence?
We're giving the mic. What we're doing right now. And I will mute the fuck out of all of you. Is we're giving the mic to Nonfon, who's been very courteous and gracious and wants to talk now. So I'm rewarding him by giving him the mic.
Obviously, I would hope we'd acknowledge if it was the case that Trump wanted to incite violence, even if that itself is not like a violent action, if he wanted to incite violence, that would be worse than what we just saw with the ICE deportation centers because they were trying to overturn the election.
It could be. We'd have to know what he actually intended.
Oh my God! Answer a question.
That's why it said.
It could be is an answer.
My God.
Yeah, but I'm
Right.
saying is do we not have enough evidence to make a judgment on that like publicly?
No,
like
I don't think the evidence shows that Donald Trump wanted the crowd
How
to
many
go attack
60
the
plus
Capitol.
court cases that he lost?
Sorry?
I don't think he wanted the crowd to go attack the Capitol. What does he gain from that? He didn't gain
Wait,
anything.
hold on.
He
Why did he
maybe
call
like
Pence a
to
traitor and said it's right over there?
They rep that he needed to.
He was pissed at Mike
overturn
Pence?
the votes
And why was
for what
why
reason?
was he
For
pointing
what?
to that direction?
You know
He
what? I
pointed in
think
the
it's
direction.
funny that-
No,
He
hold
pointed in
on.
the direction.
Why was he?
He was
Why was
was
he mad at
putting
Mike
together
Pence?
a protest. Yeah, but he was mad at Mike
Why was
Pence
he mad at Mike Pence?
He was
That's a
mad-
great question. What?
Yeah, he was mad at Mike Pence because because he was advised by John Eastman that he believed there was some kind of legal mechanism in which this could be sent back to the representatives, and either through delay or potentially even have the representatives just elect him directly. And he thought that Mike
once
Pence
they
was the
illegally-
one.
Nothing about the false electors?
And he,
You know
well, no,
what's,
that's,
you know
that's
what's
part
funny?
of that's
though,
part of the
is you
Eastman
keep
memo.
pointing to
Okay.
January 6th, what
And-
violence has happened since then from the right? Like, what significant violence? Like, okay, let's just grant everything they're saying is true. January 6th was this terrible thing. But hold on, let's just grant it. Let's just for funsies. Hold on, play my game here. Let's just say everything they're saying is true. You know, it's been pretty like chill. I didn't see $20 billion BLM happen before January 6th. I didn't see $20 billion of potential long-term damage caused by anybody from January 6th. I don't see long-term effects like, Republicans are destroying, I don't know, Mitsubishi cars like this, like they are with Teslas. I didn't see us try to assassinate Biden. You know, I didn't see anybody try to do that.
No, I saw you guys try to assassinate Trump.
Do you know why? Oh, hold on. Do you know why the Republicans were so quiet during Biden's term? Because he was a good president and he didn't actually do anything bad. It was because he
Hold
didn't
on.
actually.
Yeah. Can I quote Trump?
He didn't
See the worst president.
Okay,
since
before y'all go,
Trump.
hold on.
Hold on
Before I
for
give it
2
to
seconds.
Staxioms to respond, I'm going to read these 2 super chats because I like money and money is more important than all of you. Okay, $10 from Alexander Wren to say this. Now I see. The right doesn't commit much violence as we, just don't call what they do violence, except in technicality. But that doesn't really count, right? Thank you for
That's
$10.
the point they tried to make.
And then $5.
By saying taxes wasn't violence.
$5 from the same
What?
individual, Alexander Wren, to say, is Lactoid arguing that bail releases people from the consequences of their actions? Also, you missed my earlier super chat. No, I just
The same way pardons do, yeah.
No, because
what?
okay,
No.
that is not how it works.
I want you as
Pardons
my lawyer,
completely-
Saul Goodman.
Yeah, literally. Okay, pardons.
Wait, hold on. Can I
I
just
hope
quote
you-
Trump for 2 seconds? I just want to say a couple things that Trump said. Trump, so on January 6th, says he will never concede. He calls for his supporters to walk down to... Stop. Excuse me. If you talk over me, I'm just going to... Hey, I'm talking.
Are we talking about leftist
I'm going to
political
keep
violence?
going.
Dude hasn't
I'm going to
talked
keep
all
going.
night.
Hold on. Everyone, let Staxioms go. Staxioms.
Give me
Give
10
a
seconds.
second, yeah.
They said to walk down the Capitol to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them. He told the crowd that we cannot let that happen. When warned that his supporters had several weapons, Trump responded, and I quote, "I don't fucking care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. They're not here to hurt me. Take the fucking mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in and take the mags away." That is a little bit fucking different than what Lactoid was describing.
You're leaving out a lot. You're leaving out a lot of context.
You
there.
didn't
Correct.
respond.
He also said to be
You're
peaceful.
leaving-
He also said to be
Yeah.
peaceful.
Yeah, you guys literally quote
It's
one
very
line.
convenient that you
You
left
didn't
that out.
respond. Hold on, you didn't
Like,
respond.
about context.
He said
Why would I
nothing
leave
there
that
that
in?
endorsed violence.
You're all
Fuck
yelling
you.
over
I
each
said
other.
nothing
None of
there
you
that
know what
endorsed
I'm
violence.
saying. Hold
You
on.
didn't respond to anything I said, though. This is what's interesting. Is I said let's
Said nothing
grant
that endorsed violence.
This is not going to be interesting.
I said let's grant them everything they want with January 6th, and that's fine. And they
This is
wouldn't
the
even
one thing they
grant
have.
this because that's the only thing you have. Like
one
at the
thing they
large
have.
scale,
No,
the
let's-
Dems are doing all these things. in
That's the only thing I need.
I'm
Yeah,
just
This is the one thing they have.
Give you the win. Hold on.
The only thing I need.
Mass
Hold on.
shootings
Even
are
when
almost always
even when I
done
give you
by
the win,
far-right people or
I don't know.
jihadists.
Yeah,
Didn't we just
thank
have a
you,
trans shooting
Nonfon,
the other day?
thank you.
What about
That is not the only thing we have, Gibbs.
That's what's
Stop.
great. It is. It is the only
It
thing
is
you have.
not.
And
It's not just because
I
you
just
say
said
it is,
mass
bro. I'm
shootings.
sorry.
DC, listen, I'm sorry, you're wrong. This is the only thing you have.
Oh,
in
I'm
this.
wrong.
You let me
Okay, well,
finish.
you said
If you would
so,
let me
you
finish,
know.
you would find out why I'm wrong instead of cutting me off like a dumbass and argue with half a point. But listen, it's real simple. I'm saying this is the only thing you have at a semi-large scale, regardless, that's of any relevance. You can point
That's
to
not
isolated
true.
incidents. Stop talking. Stop talking. It's the only thing you can point to other than isolated, like small incidents, like small shootings,
Other than the
etc.
other stuff.
But that you don't have. But when I can point to mass things on a mass scale, when 2 in 5
Like what?
people nationwide, that's one
Go
BLM.
ahead.
2 in 5 people nationwide that own a Tesla. That's over 12 states. That's crazy.
Vandalism?
Or vandalism. Oh yeah, that's not violence now. Vandalism.
shooting,
No,
vandalism.
come on.
You're
basically the same thing as long as the left does.
Yeah,
Hold on.
destroying their shit's
The
not
mass
violence now
shooting
for some
is
fucking
small
reason.
scale, but the
This
Tesla
was great. Let me
vandalism,
finish
that's a
though.
large
Yeah, exactly.
Vandalism.
I don't support vandalism.
Cares
Hold
about
on,
him,
hold
right?
on, hold on, hold on,
Shootings
hold
at
on,
Tesla
hold on.
dealerships,
I think we
with
could all. I think we
assassination
could all.
attempts.
We could all just agree that the firebombing of the Teslas was violent. Right?
Oh, okay, how about assassination attempts?
Can we agree with that?
Assassination attempts?
But the
Can-
painting
Wait,
of a
wait, wait,
swastika
wait, wait.
on a,
Can
on
we?
a- was that?
I'm
Maybe
trying to
we-
figure this out. I'm trying to figure this out because genuinely,
violence
wait, hold on.
actions?
I thought
Hold on,
Lactoid's
it's-
definition of violence was that it needed to inflict harm onto another person, but I don't
Yeah,
think any people were
Gibbs.
harmed.
Gibbs.
And we're
Property,
here about
like-
we're
Whoa, whoa,
here
whoa.
Is-
That was
to get the
Gibbs'
facts
definition,
of
first of all.
definitions.
That was Gibbs' definition, first of all. And second of all,
Fine,
you
what
don't
is your
think destroy-
definition?
Property
Yeah, hold on. You don't think
What's your
destroying somebody's
definition?
you don't think
Harmful.
destroying somebody's
How is
property
property-
is not harming them?
is harmful.
Sorry? So
You don't think-
destroying people's
you don't think
property is a
destroying
way to
somebody's-
harm people?
I burn your
Yes,
house
destroying
down.
somebody's
Is it-
property harms
So
them.
if I
yes.
walk on someone's lawn, that's violence?
Hold on. If you're not home, Staxioms,
Are you
and I know
destroying
you're
it?
home, and I burn your house
I
down,
could
is that
be.
harmful?
I could
would
be.
say yes if they're walking on their lawn of how
If
consistent
you
You're-
just
that would be.
destroy my lawn, it could be violence.
No,
It's
Staxioms,
violence.
You burn down my car,
Is
you
it
firebomb my
trespassing
house.
Is
It's
that
all
violence?
violence.
No, answer this question, Staxioms. If you're not home and I burn your house down, is that cause you harm?
I don't subscribe to exact definitions, so yes, I would say that that's harm. That's fine.
Oh, so good. Then
So it's
bombing a
violence.
fucking Tesla dealership is violence and it's harmful to people.
I'd be fine with conceding
many
that,
Teslas
but I'm
have
saying
been
that goes
firebombed?
against your guys' definition.
Just real quick, because I'm not sure how many Teslas have been firebombed.
Oh, at least one.
Okay.
Oh, awesome.
The question is how many people support it. That's what we're looking at, right?
That's the
So, like, for
problem.
example,
Wait, why? Why?
I'll explain. So when you have one like healthcare exec get shot in the head, like only one you can point to, but when you have 41% of young voters cheering it on and loving it, this is a big fucking problem. It's a big
Yeah,
fucking
wow,
that's
problem.
what the debate
when the
was
group of
supposed to
people
be
is
about.
bloodthirsty.
And say, oh, hey, they're isolated, separate incidents, but we
That's what
see
Gibbs is
or
saying, a
see
lot of people
multiple
support it.
companies. But to say people support both, hey, well, I guess they're different though. Versus, hey,
I'd like to.
I don't know if I asked Lactoid
but
whether
I'd
I
like
could
to
support
the
it or not, he'd
shootings.
say, well,
and
I could support
then
it.
you want to point to school
I could
shootings.
not.
Ask, hey, Lactoid, you're conservative. Do you support school shootings? No, no
Definitely not.
conservatives
I
support
No
school
one
support
thinks
them.
you don't.
It's
Okay,
crazy.
great. Can I go?
If you ask a leftist, they're
Nobody
like,
thinks
"Oh,
I do."
we'll test the dealerships.
Okay, I want to clarify a couple things. First off, I do not support firebombing Tesla vehicles at all. I would prefer to live in a world wherein 0 vehicles got destroyed. However, we also have to balance that with the fact that basically about 150,000 people lost their jobs unilaterally from one person, one billionaire, and the fact that hold on, stop, excuse me, I'm going.
Let him finish his
Excuse me, I'm
point.
talking.
Let him finish his point.
Excuse me, I'm
Yeah,
talking.
Biden fired all the oil people.
I'd love-
That's
I'd
right.
love
Let
for
him
you to
finish his
respond.
point.
I'd love for you to
Let him
respond.
finish his point.
The fact that,
Wild.
as far as I could see, around a dozen Tesla vehicles got destroyed, where it's maybe $1 million worth of damages. That's fairly reasonable when it comes to political responses to such a wide enacting policy, especially that it's done so top down and from one specific person. I think.
Lactoid are the terrorist political
Yeah.
violence.
So when Biden told oil workers they could just find other jobs, and it was well
the way
over
we're talking about
150K
here.
people. Yeah, thanks. I guess you're right. I agree. I guess those
That's
guys
not unilaterally done by one person. I'm saying it's easier to target.
It was
Doge
unilaterally
wasn't
done by
unilaterally
Biden.
done by
Yeah,
Elon.
it was unilaterally done by Biden, and so all those guys could have been violent. But guess what? They didn't act of violence. No oil worker tried to assassinate Biden. How many did? Can you tell me? How many oil workers blew up?
How many people have attempted to
dealerships?
assassinate Elon? I don't get it.
I'm asking because no
None.
oil worker. No, hold on. No
We
oil
don't know,
worker.
technically.
No
We
oil
don't
worker
know.
approved
We don't know
of
how many
assassinating Biden versus 55% approve of assassinating these people and approve of firebombing dealerships.
Well, since it's
You're
not
saying it's totally
falsifiable,
okay.
because we don't know unless it's made
But they-
public,
So
I'm going to say a
just
billion
real quick,
people tried to assassinate
just
Biden
fact
and
check here.
failed.
There was 2 attempts on Joe Biden's life. One on August 9th,
Oil workers?
2023. Craig
Oil
DeLua,
workers?
a 74-year-old resident of Provo, Utah, threatened to assassinate Joe Biden with a
74-year-old.
M24 sniper rifle.
Was he an oil
And then
worker,
on May
Rick?
22nd,
Hey.
2023, a 19-year-old man from Chesterfield, Missouri, drove a rented box truck onto a barrier that separated the White House grounds from the public. Shortly thereafter, was taken into custody and admitted he was there to
And-
kill the president. And
Gibbs, where did your goalpost go?
Wait, hold on. This is the goalpost they asked because this is your goalpost. You said all those people lost jobs. They were justified in violence. And I'm asking Wick, were either one of those 2 people oil workers?
You didn't ask who when firebombing the Teslas, who people lost their jobs. You didn't double check to see if there were federal employees who lost it during Doge. You didn't do that groundwork when it comes to liberals attacking Tesla. But when it comes to attacks on the vice president, on the president of the United States, then you got to double check. Wait a minute, who exactly did this?
Are you implying that the government cutting jobs could somehow justify violence?
No, not at all. Not even a little bit. That's not even a little bit what I'm saying. I don't think that's what I said.
It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to bring that up whatsoever in the firebombing of Teslas.
Okay, $5 from Audacity. Hold on, $5. Money time. Shut up. It's money time. $5 from Audacity to say Shapiro could win in 2028 and we'll still be litigating January 6th on these shows. Trump got back into the office. You lost. Get over it. And then $10 from Andrew Steele to say the kid in the middle, brown sweater, is the worst of the left, a total moron, clueless. He paid me $10 to say this. So
Hey,
I'm
this is
gonna
a
say
brown
it.
sweater too.
All right, he paid me $10 to say this. I'm going to say it. He says a total moron, clueless to any points, just repeating BS he heard to reinforce the same BS he heard. A cycle of morons. It's sick. Thank you.
Can I address
I don't understand how you can.
If you want to insult any of these panelists, give me $10 and I will. Please.
Can I respond to the super chat?
You can.
Okay.
We're all responding. We're all just relitigating things that we've heard. We don't come out of when we come out of the womb, we don't have these opinions. They're formed by news articles that we read. What a stupid thing to say. Anyway, continue.
Also, I will never not
do you think the government violating the Constitution could justify violence?
Yeah, it could justify it. Sure.
Obviously.
Yeah, right. So I think that
JC, do you agree?
A lot of Doge stuff is that not just that they're firing people, but just that they're doing it unilaterally through the executive.
I don't.
And
we talked about
you might not believe the allegation. You might not believe the allegation,
nebulous,
but
so I don't know if I.
Real quick, Nonfon. I understand. I don't believe it. But like the truth of it matters in the same way that like if the election actually was stolen, then January 6th is very different than the election not being stolen. You would agree?
Well, I agree with that. I just think liberals are obviously on much better footing for believing that Trump's actions are really. You think it's more? Hold on, Lactoid. You think you have to agree that you think it's more likely that Trump is in violation of the Constitution for some of the Doge stuff than it is that the 2020 election was stolen?
So I think it is indisputably true that the 2020 election. In multiple states, it was found that they did shit wrong. Do I think it was like there was some kind of conspiracy or that it was stolen? No, but it has since been the case that they did violate the law when it comes to those voting mechanisms. And so not come to from fraud, right? But if somebody breaks the rules, like if I'm playing chess and I break the rules, even if I still lose, that's still bad, right? That's still enough to potentially relitigate the whole game.
No, if you win, it's good.
Let's just engage with your point a little further, though. Let's go a little further, right? We've just had all this cancer stuff come out about Biden. We've heard her audio leak now, and clearly the guy was just the corpse keeper, like literally a puppet. That's all he was. And so now we're sitting here going, hey, do we think that any of this shit should have been doing? And they're turning to fucking George Lucas and the puppeteers behind Industrial Light and Magic and got Yoda over here. They're just moving his hands and signing executive orders and pardons willy-nilly with auto pen. And hey, do I think after being lied to about this for the last 2 years that maybe there could have been a conspiracy they covered up? I don't know, but I do got some fucking questions about what should have been done that's unconstitutional. So when y'all are going, oh, Doge is doing unconstitutional shit, I'm going, well, for the last 2 years we've seen a lot of unconstitutional shit, and now we've been proven right that they were just puppeting this guy. And oh, hey, I didn't see anybody going out crazy violence like they're doing now. Like, how do you say that these are not equivalent, Nonfon?
You know, I'll say this for Joe Biden's handlers. They never tweeted out this could allow for any action could allow for the suspension of the Constitution. They never had any chiefs of staff or anything saying we might suspend.
How do you not see those as equivalent, Nonfon?
To deport illegal immigrants.
For one, I mean, I just don't, as much as Biden is an old fucking demented man or whatever with cancer now, I just don't believe that he was so entirely clueless that like the deep state was just auto pen signaturing everything for him. He probably did mostly direct things, but like I'm not convinced to the extent the allegations are true that they're really unconstitutional unless the 25th Amendment was invoked. And I guess like I just don't
I don't know about that.
Also just have a quick question.
Yeah.
You said you agreed that it would be justified if there was like blatant violations of the Constitution, right?
It could be. Depends what the violations are.
It could be, depending. Yes. So do you think then, in the current situation of events, that the left has more justification than like previously for violations of the Constitution.
The left has more justifications to violate the Constitution, or more justifications?
No, for violence. Like, they have more justifications for violence that, like, because of all the violations of the Constitution that Trump is doing right now.
I'll say this. I don't think Trump is violating the Constitution right now.
At all?
I think
Right now.
I mean, if we can give me an example, we can go through it. I think that if January 6th was successful, I think the left would have had a very strong justification for violence.
What? Okay. So exactly. So I think that point right there is why the left's violence right now is overblown, because there is cases of violence that are completely denounced and don't think that
Can you give us an example?
Endorsing
Potts, please. Hold on. Potts.
Yes.
Can two questions for you. One, can you give us an example of violence from the left that you do endorse? And two, can you tell us, so maybe we can actually have
keep that TOS though,
right? Can you keep it TOS, please. Can you please tell us where you think that Trump, in your opinion, is violating the Constitution? And before you answer that, $20 from Alexander Wren to say, how the F did we gloss over a lawyer arguing that making bail and getting a presidential pardon is the same? Also, did we forget that the Green Party has a monopoly on political violence?
All of you would fail an LSAT. Jesus Christ.
Oh my God. Okay.
Pilot is to plane as driver is to blank, but a car's not a plane. Yeah, okay. Yeah, go ahead, Wick.
You know what? If this
Let me answer these questions. Shut up. We're giving the mic to Potts because I asked Potts 2 questions. I'm going to give him a chance to answer those questions. Go ahead.
First answer to the question. The first question, there are no examples, at least I can think of in recent memory. I'm only like 24 years old, so I don't have that many memories of any left-wing violence I would endorse. I can't imagine any left-wing violence that I would endorse, at least currently right now.
But you did just argue that in your opinion, that left-wing violence is more justified than right-wing violence?
Yeah, I would say that, so the prompt from the debate is left-wing violence overblown? And I think that there is some, I don't ignore that there are examples of left-wing violence. I don't think there's justification for it, and I would never do it, and I wouldn't endorse it, nor would I encourage it. However, I'm saying that, saying that it's out of the blue or crazy when there are plenty of examples, which I'll get to when I answer the next question, of Donald Trump violating the Constitution, then that is a reason they can give as justification if he agrees that justification for violence would be certain violations of the Constitution.
Give us the Constitution violations. Give us a top 3.
Top 3 is going to be the violation of the Article 2's Congress. Yes. Article 2's Congress. Yeah. No. Article 2's executive. Article 1's Congress. Sorry.
Executive branch.
Yes. So Article 1 powers from Doge trying to completely withhold federal funding after it was already appropriated by Congress. The deportations, completely violating trying to justify it with the Electoral Count Act,
Alien Enemies Act.
Yes, Alien Enemies Act. As well as third one.
If you only got 2, that's fine too.
Yeah, sorry, I'm blanking because I'm sorry. Yeah,
don't be nervous. It's okay. You're just in front of hundreds of viewers right now, literally.
No,
okay.
I'm
no, it's okay.
Frazzled.
So I will let Lactoid and Gibbs respond to that, and then we'll continue on.
I mean, let's let the lawyer go first. No,
okay. I mean, I think that under the Empowerment Act, the executive absolutely had the ability to do what it was doing under Doge. There's a reason why, that's not even being talked about anymore. And there's a reason why, you're not seeing the Supreme Court holding the executive in contempt or following through with any kind of limitation on this, because they were actually fairly limited in what they did, and Doge is already winding down anyway. When it comes to the deportations, the Supreme Court just ruled the president does get to use the Enemy Aliens Act in order to do what they're doing. They just have to give more due process. And that was the Supreme Court. They just ruled that. And Trump has said that he's going to follow what the Supreme Court says. There's no indication that he's actually rejecting.
Because he likes.
Wait. When is he when does he disobey the Supreme Court?
We're obviously referring to the 9-0 decision for Garcia. Yeah.
Hold on.
That's
Did
obviously what we're referring to.
he violated the Supreme Court?
If you say that, I swear to God, if you say the word
Let's talk about that case. If you want to
explode.
talk about this case, the case for a second.
No, I don't know.
No, you don't. You don't want to talk about that case for a second, right?
No, because
You
the
know the
conservative
difference-
arguments
you
for it
know
are
the difference
retarded,
between
and I don't really
facilitate and
feel like
effectuate?
wasting a bunch of time on that. Again, I don't feel.
I know.
Any need
You want to bring it up, but now you don't want to waste time on it. I understand.
Nick,
I understand.
I
You want to bring it up.
apologize.
You want to bring it up, but you don't want to spend any time on it, right? Because of course
Yes,
that's a
'cause you'll
clear
just call me
example.
Lactoid. Yep,
Yeah,
nice.
because the
100%.
Supreme Court like
Um,
coming out with a decision is the same thing as the executive disobeying a court decision? Is there what evidence do you have that the executive has
I just want
disobeyed
to
the Supreme
apologize to
Court?
Wick because I definitely misunderstood the prompt for this panel. If the prompt truly is the right overblowing left-wing violence, the right shouldn't even have a right to comment on it when they dance circles around taking accountability for the violence on January 6th by spamming be peaceful over and over again.
Yeah, so this
That's
is
my real
this
piece.
is a dodge.
Hold on,
This is a dodge because Wick
gave you-
asked the specific question, and right now we're talking specifically about violations of the Constitution because there was a question as to what could potentially justify violence. The examples that were brought up, I am trying to explore them, and
You
you
said
guys
January
said
6th if it was
you
successful,
guys
right?
said no,
That
no,
was
we
one of them.
No, we spent a tremendous amount of time on January 6th. The two examples that were brought up were Doge and the deportations. Specifically with the deportations, you guys said that Trump disobeyed the Supreme Court. That the Supreme Court found 9-0 that Trump disobeyed them. And I want to know in what way did he disobey them?
It's not 9-0 they disobeyed him. It's
so he didn't disobey them.
Well, what's crazy is all
you
the-
said that he disobeyed
Hold on. Okay. You gotta let them respond. So Lactoid asked a specific question. Staxioms, and then Nonfon, and then Potts. I'll let each of you.
Wait. Can you repeat my question for them? Because maybe then they can't.
Let me get it after Potts.
Repeat your question because I don't want to mess it up. Go ahead, Lactoid.
Okay.
Repeat your
Very
question.
specifically, you guys said that Trump disobeyed the Supreme Court because I said he's going to listen to the
at
Supreme
what
Court.
point did he
this
disobey
time
the Supreme Court?
Yes, and I said at what time, and
At
you guys
what
said
point?
the 9-0. In that decision, where did he disobey the Supreme Court?
Okay, let me be clear for the panel. Okay, I am not saying in the 9-0 Supreme Court case that they determined that Trump disobeyed them. No, instead, in the 9-0 support case,
keep going.
In the 9-0 SCOTUS case, they said that Trump basically needed to use his executive ability to bring back Garcia. However, Trump made explicitly clear that he wasn't going to abide by that decision.
Hold on. You're fundamentally misunderstanding this case. They said he had to facilitate, not effectuate. And this is important because the distinction is critically important.
I apologize.
They returned.
Yes.
Hold on.
This is the part of the problem when you bring up shit that I'm sorry, you just don't know as much. You can't point to it. Go ahead.
It's not that we don't know as much. It's that you have these disingenuous bullshit ass arguments to
not
counter anything you
disingenuous.
say.
It's critically important, and I'll explain why. But
the way the 9-0 Supreme Court decision worked is that the original decision, not the Supreme Court's decision, back in the, I believe it was a federal district court, said that they had to facilitate and effectuate the return. It went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, okay, we're going to use facilitate, but this word effectuate, this needs to be further defined by the lower courts. They sent it back. The lower court said, okay, we're going to cut that off because
they removed effectuate.
Yes, because they were like, if they agree with us on facilitate, we're just going to go full ham on that. Then they send it back. Now Donald Trump is not facilitating at all. They're doing nothing.
No. He is facilitating. They've made a plane available in the event that El Salvador chooses to release Garcia.
What? Okay, how is it not?
I'm sorry. Why aren't we telling him to bring him back?
I'll explain. So there's a lot of Supreme Court precedent on this. Okay. The courts cannot dictate that the president negotiates a certain way with foreign leaders. In the same way,
No, I understand. Why are we prioritizing Andrew Tate?
Hold on.
Over someone the White House fucked up on and shouldn't have deported.
Before we move on to Andrew Tate for a second, specifically with Garcia.
Just answer that question.
I'm in the middle of answering Garcia, and you're bringing up Andrew Tate.
You're like a professional tap
dancer,
dude.
Holy shit. You're bringing up Andrew Tate, tap dancing. I'm trying to say
as a direct comparison, you're going to say
there's somebody else. There's somebody else here who wants an explanation as to Garcia. There's somebody here.
No issue whatsoever negotiating with the leaders of Romania, getting Andrew Tate over here.
The president can do that
over there illegally.
The president has the ability to negotiate with foreign leaders. The court does not have the authority to order the president to negotiate with foreign leaders. In the same way, the courts cannot order the president to invade a different country. Let me ask you this. If
Sure
the
has
only
the
way to
right.
get Garcia,
Sure has
if
the power to put people on trains, okay, he just might not know where they're going.
the court does not. This is settled law. Like there's so many Supreme Court cases about this. The Supreme Court cannot order the president to go and negotiate someone's release with a foreign head of state. You don't get to tell the president to negotiate with a foreign head of state. That's why they asked for a clarification of effectuate, and that's why the lower court removed effectuate, because you can't order the president to go negotiate with the foreign head of state. And the only way to get Garcia out is going to be either negotiate with the foreign head of state or invade El Salvador, and neither of which the court has the ability to order the president.
Have they even asked Donald Trump? Even actually asked them, or have they only stated? Have they only stated? Well, he won't. They've only ever stated, no, we won't. They just won't let us take him. They haven't. Where is the evidence of Donald Trump actually making the request?
Yeah, making a request to a foreign head of state is negotiation. The court cannot order him to do that.
Do you agree?
Why they removed
It's so
effectuate?
nebulous when it's convenient to MAGA, right?
This is a legal definition.
Hold on.
I do want to hold on. A lot of this. Hold on. I do want to, on this case specifically, on facilitate versus effectuate, I'm going to refer to the courts, the appellate courts. It hasn't gone to the Supreme Court yet, but this is what they say on that decision. They say the Supreme Court's decision does not, however, allow the government to do essentially nothing. It requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. And then they say Abrego Garcia supra slip op-ed 2. Facilitate is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken, as the Supreme Court has made perfectly clear. The government should be prepared to share what it can concerning and it cites a case where it says the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. The plain and active meaning of the word cannot be diluted by its constriction, as the government would have it, to a narrow term of art. We are not bound in this context by a definition crafted by an administrative agency and contained in a mere policy directive. Thus, the government's argument that all it must do is remove any domestic barriers to Abrego Garcia's return is not well taken in light of the Supreme Court's command that the government facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. That is what the courts say. How do you respond to that? Is Trump doing that today?
Trump is doing what he can do, given that the only two things that would get Garcia out would be a direct negotiation with El Salvador or invading the country of El Salvador. Neither of which, even if that would be actively facilitating, which in this case, facilitate means to make easier, not actually to effectuate, so it wouldn't be. But if the only two ways to get Garcia out involve ways that the court cannot order the executive to do, then they can talk about how the president needs to explain what he's doing. And he can talk about all the piddling shit about how he's making a plane available, about how if they let him out, we'll go get him, or something along those lines. But the only two things that would actually get Garcia out, they cannot order him to do. So this is just
I find it funny though that this is the argument that we're using right here, where it's we're gonna go talk about this case where it's questionable constitutionality. I could point to something that was unconstitutional that was occurring all during the Biden administration, and we didn't have any sort of revolution. We didn't have any car bombings. How about the enforcement of the fucking border? That wasn't enforced at all. There's a constitutional duty to the government.
Disagreeing with an enforcement policy doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
You're wrong. Hold on. Cool. There's also, check this out. Listen, you can keep babbling on. No.
It's basically a pardon.
Let's do it. Let's do it, JC. I want you to go through with me and tell me at what point in the joint resolution of 1843 or 1844, when Texas joined the Union, after we fought 2 wars with Mexico, and they agreed upon security enforcement along the Rio Grande. Can you tell me at what point that was being upheld by the Biden administration? And when you can't do that, why don't you pop my dick in your mouth and stop talking and let the men keep talking about this?
I would say when they detain.
Wait. I was asked a direct question by a very loud asshole.
Hold on. You're just wrong. You're just wrong here. You're wrong here. You have no knowledge. You have no knowledge of history. I'm done. Yeah, you interrupted me, so you're gonna get insulted. Cool, I understand that, but you interrupted me, so you're gonna get insulted for being stupid when you say something stupid. It's historically, it's in the Constitution. We have treaties with states joining. How can you argue that they were enforcing the border properly? Go ahead. Let's see.
Super easily. Was CBP disbanded under Biden?
Do you know what CBP stands for?
Customs and Border Patrol, doesn't it?
I'm asking him. God, you let him off the hook.
No. What does that
do? You think Yeah, what does that have to do with it? And do you not think that I know it's
Wait,
it's
wait,
so
Gibbs,
stupid of a
yes or
question.
no? Yes or no? You're all ass mad. You're calling me an idiot. I asked you a very simple question. You're so smart on this topic. You've read so much more than me, clearly. I mean, if you're calling me a dumbass,
Yeah.
like, obviously
yeah,
you should know.
it
Was
is. It's a
CBP, was Customs and Border
Sure.
Patrol
I'll answer it.
disbanded
Yeah, I
under
will
Biden?
answer that. Let me answer that. It doesn't matter if they were or not, if they don't enforce the laws of the land. So whenever they're taking
So they
immigrants
didn't
in,
detain immigrants? Is that what you're
willy-nilly,
saying?
well, they just released them free willy-nilly. We know that. Just like Garcia
And
here,
that's a
who was supposed to have
violation.
already... Hold on. Garcia had been filled his due process in this case. He was one of the ones released after they'd already told him he had to go.
What
And
what
then guess what?
administration
Since
was
he wasn't
that?
kicked out. Yeah, it was Biden. Guess who they did? They deported him when they were supposed to?
His trial was in 2019. Who was president then?
Was it?
Yes, Garcia's initial
Took
trial
Trump
was in
4
2019.
fucking years to
Hold on.
deport the
Okay,
dude.
hold on. His trial was in 2019.
Yes,
Okay.
where they gave him-
You
where they
think this
did
is a
not
duck?
deport
Hold on. And they had 90 days to remove him.
Gibbs, I don't
And in
need
that
to say
90
anything
days,
to
who
dunk. I
became
just let you keep
president?
talking.
At 2019, not Biden.
No.
Hold
what the
on.
fuck are
Who
you
do you think
talking
was
about?
president in
Who was
2020?
The entire year of 2020, it was Donald Trump who was president.
Oh, so whenever
the entire year
was up, when the 90 days was up and they chose not to take him, who was president?
Hold on, yeah, who was president in 2020?
Yeah, so, and who was president in 2020?
Donald
That's
J.
Biden.
If you're the one that doesn't know, you shouldn't be asking people. That's not how that works. You're the one who doesn't know.
Won. The election happened in November of 2020, and then he doesn't become president until 2021.
Sure.
Huh?
Sure. Why would you have to dismantle an entire government agency in order to? What Gibbs is saying is that he wasn't enforcing the law in such a way, and this is like leading to.
Hold on,
violence.
that's not clearly and unambiguously constitutional.
It's
Okay,
unambiguously constitutional.
It is
Clearly-
your
Clearly
delusional
unambiguous.
Texan who thinks you still get to be sovereign despite being one of
Oh
50
yeah, delusional. Hey,
states.
that's a good one.
I mean,
Good one.
pardoning
So-
is also not unconstitutional.
You're not
right?
I mean,
the argument would be this is
you are a
facilitating
state.
violence.
Deal with it.
Hold on. Do you
I
realize
just
real
murdered
curious.
A bunch of
Hold on,
illegal
hold on,
immigrants.
hold on. I want to make
Hold
some
on,
money here.
Oh, GC, do you realize you have to uphold?
Wait, $20.
You have to realize you have to uphold a treaty or resolution.
We'll get
Do you
to
agree with that?
We'll get
Hold
to
on.
that.
I'm
in a
not
second.
answering
We'll get
any
to that.
question. You're
Hold
just
on.
gonna
We'll get to that in a
respond
second.
to
We'll
what
get to that in a
doesn't
second. $20 from Alexander Wren. And then I have a statement, and then we'll just go back to it. $20 from Alexander Wren to say, my point about who has a monopoly on government violence is that the party in power doesn't need to use social violence to protest or fight against political violence under Trump. Of course, reps don't need to be socially violent. Thank you for the $20. I appreciate that. Since you thought Biden was president in 2020, I wonder how much you hate Biden for that Trump actually did.
True.
Yeah, good one. Good one.
No, I'm just curious.
Well, hold on, Wick. Remember,
I'll find
the
the quote
good
what I'm
parts are
talking
the Trump
about here.
Like,
Don't
who
worry.
do you
economy.
think was
Biden
president
economy.
during the lockdowns?
Who do I think was president during the
True.
lockdowns?
Yeah.
Who did
Biden
you
was
think
president during a lot of them.
It was
Biden
Trump.
was president during lockdown.
Both
Trump started
Trump
it.
and Biden, right?
was
And
both?
Biden extended them.
It was both. Was it correct? Is that correct? It was both. It
Like,
started
both.
under
What
Trump
Biden
and
did
ended
wasn't the
under
lockdowns.
Biden.
Biden was going for vaccine
Oh.
mandates. What Trump did
There was vaccine mandates and lockdowns under both, or not vaccine mandates under Trump, but there was vaccine mandates and lockdowns under Biden.
Yeah, absolutely. There's
The lockdowns extended into Biden's to presidency. Of course they did.
Yeah, they both had both.
The government
And then
lockdowns,
some
the
states started
federal
fighting that.
lockdowns.
Yeah.
Because they're
Yeah,
different.
shit
There's
started-
lockdowns and federal
Shit
lockdowns.
started opening up. Shit started opening up.
one at all.
Not everything opened up all at once. Like shit was continued. There was. I mean, Biden had like extended a lot of the aid and extended a lot of the lockdowns, and the Democrats did going
What
into his presidency.
lockdowns even occurred? Am I stupid? I don't think a
The
federal lockdown.
The U.S.
occurred. I think
shutdown
it
for
state by
COVID was in
state.
March 15th of 2020.
No. But what is a shutdown? Like from the federal government? Like, are you saying the federal government ordered local businesses to shut down, or that like DC started disbanding, or like I don't understand exactly what you mean by a federal lockdown. Because
So there was local like
Utah?
closings of small business. There was,
I
like,
lived in
local
Utah, and
closings.
like basically nothing happened here.
Okay, so there was like local lockdowns for sure, but of
Mhm.
course the federal government was involved in like certain restrictions, lockdowns of certain like federal industries, federal
Okay,
workers.
sure.
There's all sorts
Sure.
of things that the federal government was involved in.
I see. For
Lockdowns.
federal workers, I understand.
Right. Hold on. I'm so curious.
I just don't know
Jeff.
what the claim was.
Let's give it to.
What was
to
fine.
Nonfon.
What was the thing you were trying to say in the 1843 agreement between Texas and the U.S.? Can you repeat
Joint
that,
resolution.
please?
It's a joint resolution.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Cribs.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the agreement, all right, was when Texas came in, we sold land because Texas had fought 2 wars with Mexico, one of them over the boundary between the Oasis and the Rio Grande, right? And that became the southern border, right? And when we came in, we are guaranteed part of it was our safety and security, right? Yes, there was a whole big giant thing, and then the southern states wanted their agreement because they wanted another slave state, and the northern states wanted their own agreement, and they had all these different compromises, and we sold land to pay off the debt, and they bought these, and it became different undisputed territories. This all striking a bell? Do you remember our U.S. history? Yes, guys? No?
Well, that part I'm familiar with, sure.
Okay, cool. And part of that was guess what, shape of Texas. And then one of the reasons we fought what war, the Mexican-American War, was because what? With that Zachary Taylor and all them, they were with sit down. Why were they sit down there? Do we know why that war started?
I'm going to pull you, Gibbs. It doesn't matter. None of this matters.
It does matter. Well, but it does matter because what the reason why the war was started was
even matter.
Because they were violating the Rio Grande as the border. And guess what? Oh, we went and fought a whole fucking war with Mexico over it. Now we're having round 2, and y'all are like, oh, it's not constitutional.
Okay.
It's totally constitutional.
Let's let Nonfon respond to that because I'm not. I'm just going to confess to you all. I don't know anything about the War of 1843. I just don't. So go ahead, Nonfon.
Yeah,
it's not a war then.
If this whatever agreement between Texas and the U.S. is still legally binding or whatever, which I kind of doubt. Notice how you're talking about war. You're talking about the border, securing, the border as in stopping Mexican troops from like coming over to Rio Grande and not a violation.
You also know Pancho Villa. Pancho
like,
Villa wasn't Mexican troops. He was just a raider. And another problem was why we had to send Texas Rangers in there. Was because guess what? They were violating the Rio Grande as the border again, and they were violating the New Mexico territories. Same thing. They were crossing with impunity. We had to enforce the U.S. border, and that's been.
It's time to let the War of 1843 go.
We pull this back a little bit.
Do you think Pancho Villa is equivalent to a cartel today? I mean, no. I mean, hold on. Do you think Pancho Villa is not equivalent to a cartel today? He's an organized crime group, basically, right? I would say that's similar to a cartel. And if we're sending people in and representatives of U.S. law enforcement and military to go and stop them because they're violating the border, well, that would indicate we have a historical legal precedent that we should be fucking enforcing the border, which Biden was choosing not to do.
I'm not sure he's similar to a cartel. I don't know. I'd have to read more.
Can we pull this back a little bit? Because the main claim that Gibbs was saying is that Trump isn't being unambiguously unconstitutional. Biden was with his lack of enforcement of the border. That is not unambiguously unconstitutional.
Oh, wow.
That is not. Hold on.
I define it as it was unambiguous.
That is not like legal scholars don't have a consensus on this. Okay. That's your opinion. That's fine. Okay, I mean, it's stupid, but that's fine.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's nebulous at all. We were saying this earlier. If it's how we define things, well, if we're doing that, then I'm defining it as unambiguously unconstitutional. I mean, by everything we know here. So, like, do you see how the problem is earlier with the whole it's a spectrum argument works now?
Yeah, the problem is then you guys started to do that, and we made fun of you for doing that. That's the problem with what you're doing now. You're acting all indignant. You were doing the same thing not that long ago.
No, JC. We have been very consistent the whole time. We have standards.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. I must have been in a different room this whole time.
Can I ask you, do you think if the president does something that the Supreme Court stops him from doing because it was like deemed to be against the law or unconstitutional, would you consider that to be like an unconstitutional act by the president if he heeds the Supreme Court?
Not necessarily.
Are we talking about student loan forgiveness? Is that what we're
talking about a whole bunch of things that we can go into if they were bad enough to say yes, but they said no, so we'll leave that alone.
Lactoid, do you think that President Biden unambiguously, unconstitutionally did not uphold border policy?
No, the president, the executive has tremendous amounts of discretion when it comes to the border. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
$5 from Audacity, then we'll get back into it. Hey, we have to correct the record here on something I feel requires rectification. Stax's sweater is very nice, and it looks good on him. So
thank you
for the $5. Again, $10
so
to
sweet.
insult, $5 to compliment. Send them.
It's so nice.
Okay.
Very warm.
I do want to kind of really, or try to at least, reground this discussion for the last quarter of it. In what ways do you think that the left-wing rhetoric, I'll just ask it this way. Does the mainstream left-wing rhetoric condone, celebrate, or even permit violent acts? Why or why not?
Could Could I say, look, I'm going to make a concession that I hope everyone on my side will agree with. The online left is fucking insane, okay? And the way that they condoned Luigi and the killing of Brian Thompson, I think his name was fucking bonkers, okay?
Luigi was not just the online left.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, so I would
Luigi
agree with
was
that, but
not-
again,
what
I
do you
do
mean?
also
Yeah,
think
I mean what I said.
I do
No,
think
no,
a
I
lot
don't
of it
understand. Are you-
is
There's people dressed like Luigi at like protests. Like there's people out.
well, yeah.
outdoors.
No, okay, fine.
No, I
But like
agree, but I will say, I
systemically,
think
systemically, I don't think that there's a single Democratic official who has cheered on what Luigi did. I think that it's
Sure.
fully the citizens. Okay, now
Sure, I
whatever.
understand that,
That's
yeah.
not bad. Yeah.
Well, no,
Sure.
I agree. I just also think, like I said, I said this in my opening. Even I think I think the bigger issue is just anti-establishment people, like insane people on the right who are anti-establishment, also
Now,
support Luigi.
Here's the
Like,
thing. When you have a catch-all party, you're going to have anti-institutionalists in it. You're going to have insane or anarchists. And I hope that the best thing that we can do is that all the people with institutional power immediately reject those people. Now, have they done enough? I wouldn't think so. Okay, I think that they should really decry them a lot. However, they have clearly decried them at least somewhat, and I have seen absolutely no one endorse their actions. I do not see the same thing on the Republican side, and that is what I think is the biggest issue.
Stax, for the sake of conversation, Stax, can you show me a time where the right or a politician on the right has condoned violent actions on the right from the right wing?
January 7th.
I'm pardoning the January.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
January
So
7th.
I'm just gonna keep quoting.
It's the one.
I'm gonna keep citing.
Like,
That's the only thing I need.
We've
have
all
one,
gone
you have
over the
zero.
January 6th stuff, and
I
I'm
mean,
not
hold
trying to
on.
take away from that.
Fine.
But other than that, is there any other example?
Let other people. I don't know if I can think of anything off the top of my head.
I would have to look it up.
I'm
but
thinking of
I feel-
January 6th every time.
No, but I feel like there were some like sort of tacit endorsements of the Club Q shooting, but I don't know if those were from
Ooh.
lawmakers. If it was just from, like,
Wait.
top
What about Paul Pelosi?
Yes, I was
Oh,
gonna.
What about all the
that
mainstream
is
news
true.
networks that were going crazy and like making gay jokes about a
Donald J.
Congressman
Trump
husband
Jr.
who had his head almost bashed in. Yeah, Trump even. Yeah.
Donald J. Trump Jr. His son tweeted all of these. He said new Halloween new Halloween costume, and it was underwear and a hammer. Do you think that's fucking? And Donald J. Trump Jr. now has the audacity to look at us to be so critical of Comey tweeting that like 8647 tweet, like or Instagram post. Like I the hypocrisy is overwhelming.
Does anyone in here think that the 8647 thing was an actual call to violence?
No.
Not even a little bit.
Okay,
Not
just wanted to make
unless
sure.
the Republicans are going to concede that the 8646 was as well, which they won't, obviously.
Now, I do think that maybe I think Comey stumbled on it, and maybe the first one, the person who originally posted it or the put it down, might have meant it in like, let's kill this guy. But Comey immediately took it down and went, oh, hold on. If this is violent, I don't endorse it. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. That's bad. He took it down immediately as soon as criticism happened.
Yeah, but I think that what you were missing is, so y'all brought up the online left. Let's talk about not the online left for a second.
Okay.
Right? We had all right. So I'm going to go back all the way to 2017, and then we're going to come back to modern times, right? And do you remember when Trump ran the first time and Kathy Griffin held up a severed head of Trump? Like that was a big deal, right? It was kind of crazy.
Not a Democratic official.
No, it wasn't a big deal.
Also,
hold
do you remember the response?
hold on. At the time, the response was pretty negative. Now, the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm saying that the topic we're having now is whether it's an issue now, right? And I'm saying I feel like we can point to this time period as the initial start. It was shocking at the time, and now that would not even probably be front page news. It might be for like a few hours and something else will happen, right? Now, hold on. Now let's move to today. Just yesterday, I watched an MSNBC host sit here, or news anchor, one of the people on their little pot group show, go on a crazy rant about South African Afrikaners and how they should be purged or sent back to the Netherlands and all sorts of crazy stuff. And then I go on Twitter and I see about 3 more people on MSNBC and CNN and other major news organizations say this. Now, I know they're not Democratic Party officials, but I will say they are big talking people in the non-online left, so they're on the left. Then I go and see, Maxine Waters. We go from a few years ago with the BLM riots where she's calling for violence. Then we see this guy just this week say from the Democratic Party, I think he's a city congressman, can't think of his name, but he said Republicans should have no peace, right? Like that we should protest and disturb them in their in their
These
face.
people are the president, by the way.
All these are
AOC
all of them.
statements
These
on
are
the
all
killing of Brian Thompson
AOC
are
statements. AOC statements. Hold on, but then now we even have a mayor being charged with assault, and there's videos of him and other sitting Congress people attacking guards at an ICE facility. We have the videos. It's clear they're aggressively attacking people and trying to incite a riot at this ICE facility. These are sitting Democratic officials, along with prominent left-leaning speakers in the not online space, now acting out and advocating for violence. Now, TikTok posted that crazy stat, is they were saying that people calling for assassination is actually trending up on their platform. These are all indicators this is an accepted overall movement. When y'all point to Republicans, you point to January 6th, 77% don't approve of this. This is not a widespread thing. When a shooting happens as a Republican, like at a school, we all condemn it. We say it's bad. We're not advocating for this.
We
Y'all
respond.
are advocating for all these things.
$5
go
from
ahead.
Ben Riley says, Lactoid, if you really are a libertarian, then Trump shouldn't be your guy if you're ideologically consistent. Hashtag just saying.
Oh my fucking
shruggy emoji
God.
face. Staxioms, go ahead. Reply.
Ben, we've talked about this a couple times. We can talk about it again if you want. Go ahead.
Okay, the thing about the MSNBC host saying that Afrikaners should be deported back to the deported to the Netherlands, is that
She
right?
didn't know the right country. She said the wrong country first. She said like Germany is what
Okay,
she said.
so
She
you-
didn't know
so
that.
you-
She was just being openly racist.
Cool, gotcha. So you think that refugees that come into this country should not be deported, and advocating such is a form of violence, correct?
No, that's not what I said. I also said that she also called for violence against them and actively called for violence against them if
Wait,
they
what's
came.
wrong with what she said then?
Hold
What's
on.
wrong with what she said? Who cares?
Well, she said something racist, naming the wrong
cares?
country, and then she followed up with,
Who cares?
"We should actively attack these people."
Shit
Is
hole
that not
countries.
like
Who cares?
leftist inviting?
Wait, what? When did that come into the conversation? Because you didn't say that.
Woke
I
right,
did say
woke
that in the
MAGA,
initial
grow up.
when I
These
mentioned it.
people?
Yeah, they said they don't want them here. They want violence. They said they should have violence.
It's like
Several of them.
Wait, hold on.
that are constantly changing the rules, so you're never allowed to
Well,
win.
what's crazy is you don't listen and then you say it's changed the rule. I said
Okay,
that
wait.
when I brought it up.
You said an MSNBC host. I want to be clear. You said an MSNBC host said we should actively attack South African refugees. Correct?
And several prominent other
Quote?
people. Yeah. Yeah. I'll
Okay,
find it.
I would
Give me a second.
love if anyone could find this, because
Yeah, give me a
I'll be
minute.
honest. I'm willing to look like a fucking idiot here. I think there is a 0% chance that occurred. 0%.
All right, I'll find it for you in a moment. Here, give me a second.
Okay, I'm excited. Just I believe that an MSNBC host said, we don't want him here, or referred to the wrong country. Which, if that's your fucking metric, bro, I would love to point to your president for 2 seconds.
I just
Like, we
not
all
how
know.
unprincipled MAGA is. Why again they shouldn't be commenting on how the left conducts itself, because they can't even hold themselves to the standards that they demand we live by when it comes to being
Exactly.
racist. I like, holy shit, have you met the president? Like, I'm not even one of the guys that tries to do that. Like, I don't care. But if we're going to start evaluating by those metrics, dear fucking lord, that is not a contest that conservatives, MAGA, or Trump is going to win.
The president.
Remember when he said-
No, the president is less racist than the last president. Definitely.
Than the last president?
Yeah, than Biden. Did
Than Joe
Trump
Biden?
did
That
Trump
may be
make
true, but Biden
did
did
Trump-
not try to do an insurrection.
hold on? Did Trump make a requirement for a Supreme Court pick to be a certain race?
Did Trump
Trump-
spend
A requirement?
thousands of his
did Trump make a
thousands of his
did Trump-
personal
did
money
Trump-
to run continuous ads to call for the conviction of the Central Park Five after their exoneration?
Did Donald?
Yeah,
Did Joe
That's not-
Biden
that's
say
not,
that?
That's not overt racism in the same way.
Oh, sure.
As-
Okay.
Hold on. Joe Biden. Wait, hold on.
No, hold on. Yeah,
Hey,
I got somebody else made a
Could be
point that I got to
racism.
respond to, and
Could
then
be
and then you
racism.
can comment.
Fine,
It is
okay.
like
Could
it
be
is the
against that.
it is the most explicit form of racism when you say the only way that I'm going to select you for the Supreme Court is if you're a black woman. And I think it is
Right,
also
because-
racist to say that the only way that you could be my vice president is if you're a woman, preferably black. Both of those are racist statements.
Because, and I agree with you, Lactoid, because a judge's ethnicity has no markings on whether or not they can do their job, correct?
Yeah.
Which is why Donald
But
Trump's
if they're part of an
statement.
organization,
God.
but if they're
That
part
a
of
Mexican-
La Raza, but if they're part of La Raza, maybe it could. I don't know. Tell me.
What the fuck
did
is La
Biden- did-
Raza?
the
Oh, that's the
organization
next
that
gang,
the
which can be
organization that the
designated
judge was
terrorist
part of,
organization.
that he said that, look, this person was a member of La Raza, which was like a Mexican interest organization. This was the argument for why he was biased. He was literally part of an organization
No,
that was
that's not the
furthering
argument.
Mexican interests.
No, that's
That
the
was the argument. La
justification
Raza
that
was the
invented
organization that he was
post hoc. That is
part
the
of.
justification that was invented post hoc to make the
Is
Trump
that
was
what Donald Trump
range.
said?
Absolutely
Yeah.
not. He didn't like
Raza.
what the judge was criticizing it, or the judge's
He
daughter
was,
was
he was,
criticizing.
he was, he was
That's it.
part of a pro-Mexican organization. This is
Could I-
opposite. This
If
is
you
opposite
believe
from,
that,
this is
Lactoid, you are
opposite from Joe
stupider
Biden.
than I gave you credit
This is
for. Genuinely.
this is opposite from Joe Biden. Okay, specifically
Holy
without
shit.
any reference to any kind of like membership of organizations, without membership of the NAACP or whatever the fuck. Just simply saying, like, if you want to be part of this Supreme Court, you must be a black woman. This is the epitome of racism.
Okay,
Yeah.
Would
And by the way,
agree-
affirmative
Non-Fon,
action
let's give it
also
to
racist.
Non-Fon. Let's give it to
More
Non-Fon.
racism from the lefties, by the way. Affirmative
Give it to
action. Go
Non-Fon.
ahead, Non-Fon.
Yeah, just on the affirmative action thing, like, would you agree? Let's say hypothetically, if there were the type of like systemic racism that the left talks about or whatever, do you still think it would be racist to do affirmative
Yeah.
action in that society?
Of course.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. Like you're saying that we're going to discriminate against an applicant for being white because there's systemic racism that's beyond their control? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and so I have the exact quote now, by the way.
I don't think it's necessarily. I don't think it's discrimination in the sense that we usually talk about discrimination, but but I think like attempting to give opportunity to people who you don't believe have had the opportunity historically or whatever. I don't think that's really. I don't think that's anywhere close to the level of racism of the racism that's alleged to Donald Trump, at least. Like,
Look, this judge is of Mexican heritage. I'm building a wall, okay? I'm building a wall. I'm going to do very well with the Hispanics, the Mexicans, so no Mexican judge could ever be involved in a case that involves you. I think he should recuse himself, says Trump.
Yeah, this was also, he mentioned La Raza, and he specifically made the connection between his Mexican heritage and La Raza. Look him up.
La Raza.
Oh, the one article you're looking at, you think that he referenced La Raza?
This is a quote. Well, hold on. I've got the fucking transcript here.
The full thing.
Yes.
The whole conversation. He doesn't mention La Raza once.
I don't see. I would love for you to show me, but I don't see it. La Raza.
Okay, I have no
idea. How to spell that.
Because I don't remember every single word that Trump has ever said in those speeches. I do want to ask Potts, right? To get you back into the conversation.
La Raza.
Oh, you just Googled it wrong? Good job. Fair enough.
It's not here. It's not here. He didn't say La Raza.
Okay. Potts. Question for you.
Yes.
Do you think that Trump what's being alleged here, that Biden was more racist than Trump? What are your thoughts on that? I want to give you a chance to kind of address these things and get you back in the conversation, because you have been quiet and been a good boy for a little bit. So there you go.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that
content. I thought I was a good boy for content.
You're all good boys. Everyone gets a treat. Okay, go ahead.
So I think that the allegations of Biden being racist are just like ridiculous. I don't think that. I think any statement that is attributed to him being racist is either him like a mental gaffe or just like genuinely being, misquoted. Otherwise, the allegations of Donald Trump, though, are much more concrete. He has, like he brought up the case, I forget the name of it, the 5 in the Central Park
5.
Yeah, Central Park 5. The statements and that whole case is just ridiculous, denying the housing applications, his statements about all of the immigrants, the Muslim ban, just basically every action that he takes when it involves minorities or races or anything of that nature comes with an undertone of like, that just seems a little ridiculous. Even the dismissal of the Jags, when he did that, it was the statement he gave. The reason for why he did that was to combat diversity in the military. But everyone that he fired were extremely well respected. They had great careers. They had lots of time in the service, and then they replaced them with people who just like had bachelor's degrees in political science that have never served in the military. That's a DEI. Like that is the peak of just inserting people who are unqualified into positions they don't belong. So yeah, I just think the whole comparison is ridiculous.
I'm shocked.
Wait, can I respond to something?
I'll let you respond real quick. But I am shocked no one mentioned the biggest thing in my mind, which was the Obama birth certificate thing. Obama wasn't really
True.
Yeah,
citizen,
the birther.
blah blah blah. But go ahead.
That's not racist
Lactoid.
because his name's
Hey, wait.
Hussein. You
Not
never
nearly
know.
as racist again as like saying that you must be a particular race to have a job in my administration. Fucking crazy. Second of
Just
all,
like, wait,
I
that is
have
what-
to raise
like,
you up
how-
before you guys knee jerk to
Democrats
that.
are
Before you guys
undemocratic
knee-jerk to
for
that,
just putting
oh, no.
Kamala forward, but the Republicans are democratic
that's a little bit
for
racist.
electing an insurrectionist.
So you're saying
at least Trump won a primary.
Hold on.
Okay, actually won like an actual
wow.
race.
Kamala won a
okay, first of
primary,
all.
Let's-
too.
hold
Just
on,
like
hold
shit.
on, hold on,
Kamala
hold
won
on.
the
We
primary
gotta give
too.
Lactoid a
Primary,
chance.
Kamala
We
in
gotta give
2020.
Lactoid a chance. We are winding down.
She
but we gotta
didn't
give
win
Lactoid
that.
a chance. Go ahead, Lactoid.
She was the
She
running
didn't win
mate.
it. She
She was the
didn't
running mate.
as the VP, not the P.
Correct.
There's a difference between the two.
Why do you think we elect
I wanna-
VPs? It's
I
for
wanna-
when
I
the
gotta fact
fucking
check you.
P goes away.
I'm going to fact check you, okay?
Come
Because you
on.
said something
Come
that I knew was
on.
incorrect. But then I found the transcript, okay, and I see where you're wrong, okay? Let me do this
Okay.
here. So Tapper. So no Mexican judge could be involved in a case that involves you, Trump. Quote, well, he's a member of a society where, very pro-Mexico, and that's fine. That's all fine. But specifically referencing La Raza. He's specifically referencing the society.
Okay.
Exactly.
I just want to push back on the wanting a specific race to be in like a political position.
It's racist.
The whole point of politics is about representation. It's about representing your your population. It's about getting, representing your constituents. And I think that after you have a pool of qualified candidates, after you already have made the determination that they're qualified, to say, oh, I think I should probably bring in a minority because I'm an old white guy. I probably shouldn't be I shouldn't pick another just, normal white guy. I should pick someone who's qualified, but also of a different race so they can represent a broader view of society and a bigger portion of people that I can't reach, that I don't actually represent.
Sure. Let me ask you this. If you're in a primarily white area, let's say like 98 or 99% white, and then you start talking to people and they're like, we're not going to vote for that guy. He's black. And he doesn't represent us. A white person would represent us. Do you think that'd be like a little bit of a racist sentiment?
I think that it would really depend on the person. It would depend on the context, I think.
Oh, it's a
Okay.
spectrum.
What context could
It's a
make that
spectrum,
not racist?
Lactoid. It's a spectrum.
No, that's just flat out racist. This is flat out racist. If somebody said, I'm not going to vote for Obama because he's black, that's racist. Flat
Lactoid,
out.
I gotta
Even though most of America is white.
spectrum.
Even though
Lactoid.
most of America is white. That doesn't mean that you can just...
So I think the difference is they're
It's nebulous,
withholding
though. It's
they're
nebulous.
withholding the
It's
position.
not.
They're withholding the position from him because of his race. They're saying his race is what disqualifies him for me. Yes.
And there's
for
lots
me
of people who could be
individually.
in, there's lots of people who
if
could
you
be in the
only
Supreme
date
Court
women,
that
are you
weren't black women.
sexist? If you only date
But,
women, are you misogynist or a misandrist? Are you a misandrist?
I mean, I'm a misogynist and I only date
Sure,
women. So
fair enough. Yeah, that's
I
fair.
hate everyone.
Yeah, just
Nice.
saying.
Super
we are kinda
2016
winding
Reddit
down.
cult.
We are kind of winding down, right? It's been, look, I've been at this for 3
Ain't
hours,
broke.
and I'm an old man, an old white
Aw.
man, if that matters. It doesn't, but
It does.
White presenting.
I want to
Get 'em,
thank
guys!
you
These
all.
people.
Get 'em!
I want to thank you all for. Oh my, this has been a tough one to moderate, but I appreciate you all coming by. I appreciate you all coming down. We're going to give each of these lovely individuals closing thoughts, closing statements on the matter at hand. I do want to remind people that if you enjoy this content, if you like what I do here, if you've had fun watching this, hit that like button. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you hit that subscribe button so you can see more. We got some great content coming up tomorrow. We're going to be talking about all sorts of news of the day stuff, call-ins. It's going to be fun. I'll let other people debate me if they want, like the guy who did earlier today. We are going on Wednesday. We have a very special show. We're going to have Enemy Charlie and Tolly Bots, women, and they're going to be fighting for our amusement. We're going to put them up against Team Fatty and another gentleman who say that women don't really deserve rights. And so these women are going to fight for their rights, literally. Let's see if they are able to succeed. So tune in Wednesday for that. It should be fun. And tune in tomorrow for some call-ins, some chill vibes. With that said, I'm going to give it first to JC, and we're going to end with Nonfon. So JC, close us out.
Well, this was a very frustrating panel, but it was also very telling. I think the fact that we kept circling back around to right-wing and specifically MAGA examples of violence was pretty telling with regards to the prompt. Obviously, even if left-wing violence was more on the rise than the minuscule amount that it is clearly not even close to the problem that we face institutionally downstream from the office of the president, so long as he enjoys criminal immunity and is allowed to break the law flagrantly in front of the country's face, like accepting $400 million bribes, like refusing to obey directives from the Supreme Court, regardless of how some individuals on this panel may have thought the president was obligated to do. I think that the idea that, at the end of the day, the idea that like Republican conservatives were on here at all to criticize us is kind of hilarious. And I hope that I get to have the conversation about like in-party critique with some left-wingers who are actually concerned with addressing violent rhetoric instead of maggots who have no interest in doing so.
Where can people find you?
Oh, sorry. So I'm on YouTube, Kick, Twitch, and TikTok now. And then I'm also on Twitter, all under some variation of the Big JC. And I'm also in your server, too.
Okay. Check them out, gang. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Ick.
Staxioms.
Hi. I feel accomplished during this debate as JC began the debate thinking he was rather a centrist and then realized exactly who he was dealing with and came pretty promptly to our side. I don't know if you've seen that clip. I actually don't even know where it's from, where they're debating Kobe versus LeBron. And they're just like, what about the rings? And he's like, that's the only, he goes, that's the only argument you have. And the other guy responds, that's the only argument I need, buddy. And that's how I feel about January 6th. Genuinely, you cannot speak a single word until you decry everything that happened that day. And I don't want to hear a single word from you guys about violence until that occurs.
Where can people find you?
Sorry. Yeah, I post on Twitter and YouTube, and I make videos on TikTok, etc. Staxioms everywhere. Thank you so much for having me, Wick.
Check them out.
It's always a pleasure.
And again, I got links to all these people's stuff in my YouTube description. Check them out. Click them. We'll reward them for rewarding me with their time. I appreciate every single one of them. Go ahead, Potts.
Yeah, I think that the big thing was that I think the big thing that kind of just shows the whole debate is that the violence on the right is constantly dismissive of January 6th. And they will always want to point to BLM, but the vast majority of the left and anyone who ever talks about it and people in positions of power will denounce it. And then on the right, you have the president of the United States refusing to even admit that the election wasn't rigged. And I think that the positions of power are really important for that kind of dynamic, that people in power acknowledging it, even if 70% of Republicans don't think it's a big deal or think it is a big deal and think it's bad. The fact that the president of the United States seems to not think it's a big deal is a much bigger problem than the majority of Republicans. You can find me at Pottsdavidg on all socials and YouTube. And yeah.
Check them out, gang. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. AdmiralGibbs, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually Staxiom's argument at the end there summed up really their whole argument and why it's a flawed thing, right? He brought up the Kobe Jordan thing and the debate about, hey, the rings, that's all you ever need. Well, if that was the case, then Bill Russell would be the GOAT all time because he's got way more rings than anybody else. But nobody calls him the GOAT, or very few do. And that's really sums up leftist logic, is they don't have any logic. They don't even understand their own arguments. And just that's why he has to sit here and say things like, oh, I have nebulous definitions about what violence is. I don't want to hold a standard. Well, me and Lactoid can sit here and point to one standard that's consistent across the board and hold everybody to that. And then that's why we tried to examine this debate outside of the governmental point of violence and focus on the political violence happening from non-government actors. But they didn't want to engage in that. They wanted to obfuscate, and it's pretty clear why. It's because they all support terrorism, like I started at the beginning. It's only what they care about, that only what they think is right. They'll morally justify anything that they see fit, and justifying violence is very easy for them because, Trump, orange man, bad. I'm AdmiralGibbs. You can find me everywhere as AdmiralGibbs. We got a fun week going down. We got a doubleheader on Thursday. If you like this, we also have 2 DCS matchups, one on Tuesday night and one on, just one with DCS matchup. One Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Be Favorite Liberty versus Big Buckaroo. And you'll see, if you like this the kind of content, you can see more of it. But right after this on Primes, me and Lactoid will both be there.
Okay, and we'll raid out into Prime because we like Prime here, and we'll give them some extra viewers. So thank you for being here. Gibbs, always appreciate you. Lactoid.
Lactoid, you can find me on Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. And I want you all, for a moment, to imagine a world, okay? The year is 2100. It's a nuclear wasteland. There's fires everywhere. Roving gangs of leftist thugs are roaming around, attacking people with crowbars. They're burning down things. They're destroying things. They're all literally Hitlers, okay? And they're doing all this terrible shit. But remember, January 6th, you can't criticize any of it. You can't bring it up on a panel about leftist violence. You know, we can talk about BLM and the fact that overwhelming majority. Am I lagging out a bit? Am I lagging out?
Okay,
I'm back. The overwhelming amount of Democrats support BLM, which is founded on a lie, right? A lie that is on par with the election being stolen. That there is this massive, disproportionate amount of police brutality towards Black people. That when you have currently storming of ICE facilities, when you currently have bombings of Tesla vehicles, when you currently have all this shit occurring right now, but none of it matters. Because January 6th, which is not popular amongst most Republicans, only 30% approve of it. Remember that happened. So you can't bring up anything else. Nothing you can talk about. You can't talk about the leftist violence. You can't talk about the killing of Brian Thompson. You can't talk about AOC's comments on that. You can't talk about any of it. Because remember, 30% of Republicans were in support of January 6th.
Okay, thank you, Lactoid. Check him out, gang. Last but certainly not least, the goodest boy on the panel today, Nonfon. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know what to add at this point. I mean, I think the most concerning thing is it seems like a lot of the violence on the right is kind of tacitly endorsed by the people in power, like I said, and it seems like, you know, when there are allegations of Democrats supporting violence or whatever, as in the case with BLM, it seems like there's a, you know, deeper ideology to it, that they're actually supporting the violence is, you know, incidental to that, and it seems like most politicians condemn the actual violence that happens. I'm going to keep streaming for a while. I think we're going to be watching Sam Cedar talk to Ethan Klein.
Ezra Klein.
Yeah. And probably Tim Pool talk to the Adam Conover as well. So you should check me out on YouTube at Nonfon and on Twitch and Kick at Nonfon420.
Okay, check him out, gang. Thank you once again. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I might be facilitating an impromptu debate between Andrew Steele and Alexander Wren tomorrow, I guess. I wonder if I can get them to pay me money to do it. That'd be fun. Huh? Anyway, I'll see you guys later. We're right out to Prime Kai. Make sure that you let him know that it is a hate raid, and that we are all super racist, every single one of us. Okay, great. Wait, bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.
All right, bye, guys.
Okay.
I like your shelf back there, Wick.